7 o'clock. Do you have 7 o'clock, Dallas?
I do. We are going live on YouTube. And let me start the recording and you'll be good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our regularly scheduled commission meeting for this Monday night. First, I want to apologize for not being able to be live on video. The internet that I have is a little bit sketchy, so I want to make sure that my audio comes through crystal clear all night long. And I think it's best if I don't try to do the video at the same time. We have one change to our published agenda. I'm going to add a second presentation, a second item under presentations. We have Wendy Sapp, who is running for the Alachua County Property Appraiser, joining us tonight. That's the only change that I have. I do have a discussion item at the end of the night, but I'll bring that up at the end of the night. Are there any other changes to the agenda as it has been published before I ask for a vote? Okay, seeing none. With that, do we have Commissioner Norfleet? I see now. I see the P. Commissioner Norfleet, can you do an audio check for us real quick before I proceed?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I have one change to the agenda. I have no one else asking to change the agenda. So with that, I will ask for a motion to approve the agenda as it was published.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Martin. Any questions or comments on the motion on the floor before we go to public comment? Okay, seeing none. Dallas, if you take us to our phone number. Ladies and gentlemen, we have about a 30-second delay between our YouTube feed and the live feed. So every time that we go to ask for a vote on the screen, we will put the phone number up. If you're watching at home, again, you're about 30 seconds behind us. You should see the screen with the phone number on it at this time. All you need to do if you want to make a comment or you have a question is call that phone number on your screen. Once we get you into the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. It's got a red circle around it. Click that hand symbol. That'll let us know that you have a question or a comment, and we'll get you in the queue. At this point, all we have done is open the meeting, and we are about to approve the agenda with one addition. A second presentation, item number 2, from Wendy Sapp, who is running to be your Alachua County Property Appraiser. Dallas, do we have anybody with their hand raised?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Commissioner Coleman.
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley.
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin. I saw a thumbs up from Commissioner Martin. Commissioner Norfleet.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and that will take us to our invocation. Dallas, I don't see Minister Marsha Lee in the meeting. Is she called in and she's just not on my screen? She's supposed to be here for tonight's invocation, but I don't see her. Do you see her, Dallas?
I do not see her either.
All right. Well,
does anybody know a preacher?
I hate to keep going in this Zoom world. We've had a hard time getting our ministers to Zoom in. So I hate to keep going to the well of Destiny Community Church, but I see a thumbs up. So I appreciate it. So can Commissioner McKinley, can you take your commissioner hat off for 1 second and put your pastor hat on and provide for us tonight's invocation? Ladies and gentlemen, it's a little awkward on Zoom. If you want to stand for the invocation, that's perfectly fine. If you want to bow your head, that's fine as well. Immediately after the invocation, we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. And Dallas has a nice American flag for us to look at on the screen when we do that. And with that, Pastor McKinley from Destiny Community Church, thank you, sir.
Let us pray. Oh, Father, we humbly come before you tonight, thanking you, Lord, for your hand of blessing upon our community. Lord, we thank you for the municipality that we live in, that is Newbury, Florida. And Lord, we thank you for economic growth. We thank you, Lord, for residential growth. And Lord, we just ask that you would just guide the commission tonight, just ordain our steps, Lord. Give us the heart and mind of Christ as we go through this tonight. We pray all of this in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. And Dallas, if you would put our there, He's Johnny on the spot tonight. We have American flag. So if you would, please stand for the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor McKinley. Once again, saving the day. And with that, we'll move on to our presentations. It's my pleasure to introduce our Alachua County Sheriff, Ms. Sadie Darnell. Thank you so much for being here and giving us our annual update. We appreciate it. And now tell us about the state of the city of law enforcement here in the city of Newbury.
All right, just 1 second. I'm trying to get the PowerPoint on the full screen.
Take your time. We've
There we
had lots of trouble with this. So,
Yeah. All right, good evening, everyone, Mr. Mayor, commissioners, and staff and guests. I'm going to do the annual report for the year 2019. And this is the table of contents. You each should have a copy of this. These are the commanders at the upper part of my agency, Colonel David Huckstep, Major Latrell Simmons. And these are the personnel that are assigned to your area in Newbury, Captain Richmond, Lieutenant Becky Butcher, who attends a great deal of your meetings, and also Sergeant Billy Beck or William Beck. The deputies that are assigned to your area are Tom Thusen, Chris Parrish, Michael McClendon, and Stephen Taylor. For the entire year of 2019, the calls for service, going back to 2017, showing you a comparison of calls for service and also reports. Specifically between the year of 2018 and 2019, there were 951 additional calls, an increase in calls for service, and 72 more case reports. Don't have an explanation as to what that is, but it is what it is. And definitely you're getting your bang for your buck, so to speak. The breakdown of the percentage of crimes that we tracked, as you can see, your largest number of crimes are domestic violence incidents, 120. That's a large number. Just to let you know that we do have a special program that was implemented back in 2009 at the Alachua County Sheriff's Office. It was one of the first of its kind in the state of Florida to measure from an evidence-based standpoint the level of deadliness or lethality regarding the incident. We've been doing this now for 10 years. The first time that we reached over 500 incidents, it's called the LAP, Lethality Assessment Program. The first time we reached over 500 incidents was in the year 2019. Of those, well, actually what we're showing now for so far this year, for the month through the month of June, January through June, they're having over 70 a month. That is very high. Typically range from between 50 and 60. So if we continue at this rate for the entire county, we will be almost double the amount of incidents we had in 2019. We think that COVID and the isolation and the frustration and anxiety coupled with all the fears and the economic situation with COVID may be an attributing factor. We can't prove it, but we know that is likely the case. For the crime statistics, this is the breakdown. It's just a different way of looking at it, giving you the actual numbers, and these are the ones within the city limits. If you break it down from the patrol operations standpoint, we give you the overview of traffic citations. The total for 2019 was 657. The chart, the bar graph to your right, shows the top 5 traffic citations, not all of them. Those numbers of the top 5 total 463. As you can see, it's pretty clear that the number one problem in Newbury is speeding. That's the highest one by far, and also one of the greatest concerns. From the standpoint of looking at where the traffic and enforcement occurs, the redder the redder the zone on this is a thermal heat map, shows the greatest number of activity of enforcement, and then as it gets lighter into yellow and then into green, there's a lower level of enforcement. But clearly it's in the center city area and also up to the north a bit and west, going towards Springs County, I believe that is. Warrants Bureau, we're also doing, had activity, and for the entire year, total number of 20 warrants were served, 8 were felonies, 9 misdemeanors, and you can see the breakdown for the rest. We also are in the area of Newbury. You won't see us in uniform. We'll be in unmarked units and plain clothes, but the combined Gainesville-Alachua County Drug Task Force has been in the area. They made 2 cases in Newbury during that time and 3 arrests. Any information regarding narcotics activity, they'll call the number that's listed on the screen, or also they can call Crime Stoppers and potentially be considered for a reward, 372-STOP, or using P3 Tips app on their phone. Juvenile Relations Bureau, you're familiar with these programs. The majority of these programs are on hold and are pending, based upon COVID. Most of you all are aware that the Washington, D.C. Safety Patrol trip was canceled entirely this year, also due to COVID. The Newberry Elementary School, your deputies, Deputy Nystrom there, Deputy Montana Sayers, and then Travis Deviney. Even though they're not in the schools, what they are doing to compensate for that is they are working the areas where they know that their students live. They do stop-by visits at the end of the driveway to stay in touch with their students. They also have been participating in the food deliveries, the meal distribution, especially where they know the family have some needs in that area. And then when school administration is not able to make contact either for well-being or just to relay information, the school administrators know they can contact these deputies within the area of Newbury to make contact with the parents or the student. It's working out pretty well. Some of our deputies have also been reading on midnight shift so that their students can see them in a different role, but still have contact with them. And that's been a very, very valuable situation that we've had. Speaking to the national concerns regarding racial injustice, I want to make sure that you all are aware that the Alachua County Sheriff's Office has been involved with it's called RED. It's Racial and Ethnic Disparity. It's a national initiative out of Washington. It's actually Georgetown University. We started this in Alachua County Sheriff's Office in 2015. It's now in its 3rd year of evolution. It continues to be a national model for training regarding the ethnic disparity and also the disproportionate minority contact. If you look down at the bottom of the screen, we had greatly reduced the number of in-school arrests, and this is out of the total county of estimated 14,000 students. You see that there was a significant jump in 2018 to 19. Only 5 of those occurred in the city of Newbury. And most of the rest causing that increase were chronic offenders, repeat offenders. And so we keep a handle on that. Our school resource and youth and community resource unit stay very much on top of what's happening with our youth in our community. This is our Youth and Community Resource Unit. They have still maintained contact with some of their programs, utilizing greater distance. They're not in the crowded situation. These pictures were taken in 2019. You will see different pictures with greater social distancing for the year 2020. We participated in these Newbury community events during the year: movie night at the park, Operation Cone, the Newbury tree lighting, toy giveaway, youth dialogue, still continuing those, but with a greater social distancing, and also Newbury Christmas parade. These are some notable cases I want to bring to your attention. On July 31st of last year, deputies responded to a stolen vehicle that turned out to be out of Citrus County. The person was arrested, name of Justin Noble. He was arrested for that stolen vehicle and also possession of a controlled substance. The middle case is from August 13th. It was a hit and run crash on Southwest 266th Street. The driver and passenger within that vehicle were taken to the hospital. The driver causing the accident left the scene, did not notify anyone, went home. Deputies were able to locate him and make an arrest and charged him with the appropriate charges for leaving the scene and not notifying people of an injury crash. Then the bottom one is a business burglary at the Pawn Pro Shop. 6 handguns were stolen, very much a concern to all of us. Your school resource deputy Sayers identified one of the suspects based upon the bulletin that was put out. She later observed him walking along with his family, his mother and siblings along Newbury Road. Deputies were able to make contact. During that time, he passed a firearm from himself to his brother that was eventually recovered. 2 more firearms were recovered in his home, and the other defendant, also a juvenile, both were identified and both were arrested. These are some unsolved cases. There are about 4 of them that I'm going to go through. The one on your left, it was the second fire of 2 at the area of Newbury High School. This happens to be a forklift that was found burned on the baseball field. There was another one fairly recent in time proximity involving a fire of a bale of hay. Anyone with information is asked to call that Crime Stoppers number, 377-STOP. And also the one on the right, there's some pictures here, and also a vehicle with, you notice it's got a distinctive half black roof on it. And these are situations that could potentially result in a reward. The one on the right is a construction site burglary that occurred back in November of 2019. These pictures were taken at 3 a.m. the previous day, so we believe these to be the likely suspects. And again, that car is a 4-door vehicle, possibly a Mercury Marquis with a black half-top roof. Lila Leach, I know y'all are familiar with this case, so we all hope it will be solved one day. This occurred back in 2010. The reward amount actually is now at $10,000. And we are currently using the highest and best level of DNA technology. It's a matter of time before we find out who is responsible for this crime. I would strongly encourage anyone who has information about this crime to come forward. The reward is still available, and the family wants this solved. They're not passing judgment. They know things probably went awry during the encounter, but they do want to have some resolution in this case. The last case is not it has been resolved. This is a suspicious incident that happened back in actually May of this year. This young man was going door to door. Neighbors called him in, and that's exactly what we want people to do. If you see something suspicious, call us so that we can have deputies check it out. He was going door to door, making solicitation of a home security system. Deputies were able to follow up, and by the next day, they identified a location in Gainesville where they were staying. It was a group of people from out of county that were going to solicit in Lake City, Newberry, and Gainesville. And so they were advised that if they were going to do that in the city of Newberry, they needed to go through the permitting process because your ordinance prohibits solicitation. Ending up here with sexual offenders and predators, you have a total of 18 in your area. 17 offenders are sexual offenders, and you have 1 predator, which shows to be in the top left. Anytime the person is a predator, they're listed in red. That indicates it's a higher level of 2 very serious categories of sexual offenses. At the end of the segment with the sexual offenders and predators, it gives you the definition. So people, if they ask you the question is, what is the difference between them? It's based upon the specific time when the offense occurred, because the laws have changed in the varying degrees based upon the age of the victim, and then also the time frame in which it occurred. This is something I give to you at each presentation. It gives you the overview of the services that we provide to the city of Newbury. Most of them are basic and enhanced services. The programs, as I mentioned, that are listed down at the bottom some are on hold due to COVID. Others have been amended so that we can still have contact with the community and with the youth. One of the most recent variations they came up with was, and I don't know if you saw it on TV 20 news coverage on 6 o'clock on Friday night, this past Friday. It's a kickball with a cop. Very popular, and it's social distancing and COVID appropriate. The kids had a great time, and the deputies did too, even though it was extremely hot. but they also were rewarded with our cone ice cream truck at the end of that game. I want to thank you for the ability to serve you again this year. Remind all the residents and you all, please help us fight crime by reporting all suspicious activity. If you see something, say something. It's the only way that we can get on top of it quick enough to make a difference. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Sheriff. As always, very informative. I really like the addition of the hotspot maps. That was very helpful. And at this point, we'll move to the commission. Does the commission have any questions for the sheriff on the presentation? I don't see any hands. Let me give just 1 second. Sometimes my computer has a little bit of a lag. Sheriff, while we're doing that, I know that the city of Gainesville is seriously contemplating defunding some sections of the GPD. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but can you speak just a little bit on what that might look like for Alachua County? I know that GPD is your largest law enforcement besides for ASO, and that you guys work hand in hand. Do you have any thoughts on what might happen in Alachua County if they go down that path?
I think it's a tragic move. I think it's a horrible decision. I think it was not well thought out, well researched at all. So I am, not that I have any say in it, but I am deeply concerned about it. And the future will be the only indicator of what is going to happen if they continue to go down that path. Now that will have an effect on Alachua County, because I'm sure that we're going to be affected as far as having to help out even more. We have done a great deal of assistance, and willingly so, over the years with the Gainesville Police Department. Both myself and my colonel and others here at the Sheriff's Office worked and retired from the Gainesville Police Department. We have a deep honor and respect for them and great concern right now for what's going on. I appreciate your question very, very much. I will say that the Alachua County Commission, at least the majority of them, are supportive of us. They have been for the last several years and hopefully will continue to be. I have heard no discussion except from one commissioner and some public that were orchestrated to call in to support defunding the police. I think it's a catchphrase right now. It's getting some life, but in theory and in reality, defunding the police makes no sense. We can talk about transforming the way we deliver services, but to take funding away and take positions away from law enforcement, which is a basic function of government to provide safety and protection for your citizens and our citizens, is just makes absolutely no sense and definitely needs to be given more thought and more research. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Madam Sheriff. The only other question I had is that this commission about 2 years ago started an anti-opioid task force, and they really charged that group of volunteers from the city with figuring out a way to combat the opioid crisis that is still ongoing. We don't hear much about it in today's COVID world, but I noticed, and I always do, your program of RAD for Kids, because that is what they have decided that they want to focus on as a holistic approach to empowering kids to say no to all kinds of situations. Mm-hmm. Can you speak just a little bit? Is that program in jeopardy? Newberry is certainly willing to help. This group of folks are willing to raise the money to make Newberry Elementary a RAD school, but is it going away from the county? Is that something that we can still participate in?
No, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I believe very strongly in the program. I have seen it work at the individual group level and at schools. I'm happy to report that one of the first school in Florida is here in Alachua County. It's the Micanopy Cooperative School. They were the first school to have all of their administrators, teachers, and students go through the RAD program. They are a zero bullying school. They have not had an incident of bullying. The kids and the administrators take a pledge every single day to remind each other about protecting themselves, protecting their bodies, looking out for one another. It's a marvelous program. I know the state director, and also, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Hillary Sessions, the mother of one of the student murder victims, Tiffany, I'm sorry, she wasn't a student murder victim. She was the year prior. She was murdered the year prior to the student murders in February of 1989. Ms. Sessions is involved at the state level, and I know she would love to bend your ear about it and get some support. So the program is not going away. It is on hold right now because of COVID, because we can't have the one-on-one contact, but we may be able to change the content with the approval of the state to amend it, just depending on how long we go through this pandemic. I'd love to have a conversation more with you, Commissioner, and the mayor regarding this program. It's very successful.
Thank you, ma'am. Did any of the commissioners have any questions that came up in that conversation? If not, we'll let the sheriff get on with her evening. We appreciate you joining us here tonight. Thank you so much. We know this Zoom world is a little weird, but we're still trying to get business done.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your night. And that brings us to our amended agenda. And we are going to hear from Wendy Sapp, candidate for Alachua County Property Appraiser. She's here with us tonight. Loved all of those books behind you.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are for reading.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me. I just want to thank the commissioners and you, Mr. Mayor, and the city clerks and the finance director. All of you I've worked with, Miss Judy Rice and Dallas Lee on the budget and supplying the numbers. And you guys have just been wonderful to work with. So I want to thank you for that. And thank you for having me tonight and having this opportunity to speak with you. Just briefly, just want to introduce myself. I'm Wendy Sapp. I'm a candidate for Alachua County Property Appraiser. And I want to make my experience, I want to work for you, for the taxpayers. I want to work for the cities. I'm only here because I want to do this job. I have 19 and a half years, 16 as the tax roll compliance coordinator within the office, and 3 years as a field appraiser. So I've actually been out around pulling a measuring tape and knowing what that means and what that process is. And now I get to see the final product, which is wonderful to get to see that. And the numbers grow. And I get to watch those numbers go, and then we have a recession or a change in the market, and those numbers drop. So my mission is, if I get elected, I'd like to do more public outreach within the community. I'd also like to get with all the small cities and get the education and work with you guys to work with the citizens and the taxpayers to say, these are the exemptions and the classifications that are available. Let's see if you qualify. And I want to get that information out. There's so much information, and I think that as an elected official, that's our duty, is to get the information out to the taxpayers, to the citizens, so they can be informed and they can make their own decisions and apply for those timely and know what that means to them. You have a lot of agriculture parcels in Newberry. That's kind of closing up because of your growth, but there's still a lot of ag classifications that need to be done. People are very concerned about that. They want to make sure they have their ag classifications. They want to make sure they have their exemptions for homestead and veterans, disability, and seniors. Those are important. $500 in your tax bill may make or break some people that are on a budget, especially during these times. And we may be going into a time where we don't know what the market's going to do. I have a suspicion that the market is going to react to the COVID virus drastically after the first of the year, but I don't know that. And if I had a crystal ball, I could tell everybody what to expect. But I'm here and I want to serve, and I care about the community. I was born in Alachua County. I was raised here. I've raised my children here, and I work here. And I love the communities and the cities around it. And I am very humbled at the support that I've gotten. And I just want to be there for the citizens of this county. You deserve quality elected officials. And I would like to be the one. So if you have any questions, or if you'd like to talk to me in depth more, you can reach me at my website. It's wendysapp.com. My phone number is there. You can email me, you can text me, Facebook message me, whatever you like to do. And I'd love to speak with you more on a more in-depth basis if you have questions or concerns. And my priority would be with the taxpayers. I want to advocate for the taxpayers and also work with the small cities and build those relationships to where we have an open line of communication. I think that's very important to have those open lines of communication and be in contact with each other and work with each other. I think it's really important. And you guys have been wonderful to work with. So I'm excited for the city of Newbury. You've got a lot of good things coming your way. And I hope to be able to serve you as your next property appraiser. So thank you very much. I hope you all go out and vote, whether it be by mail or in person, but make sure you do vote. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Wendy. Before I open it up to the commission for questions, can people find you on Facebook under Wendy Sapp? Is there Wendy Sapp for property appraiser, Alachua?
You can find me on Facebook under Elect Sapp, SAPP.
Okay, wonderful. All right, well, we've got maybe some questions from the commissioners. You know, we do have, I don't know that I would call him an expert on property appraiser, but we do have someone on the commission that has some experience anyway. Anybody have any questions or comments for Wendy Sapp, candidate for Alachua County property appraiser? No questions. You did such a great job, Wendy. You covered all the bases. You told us your platform and how to get in touch with you, and that's it. So we appreciate you joining us here tonight. Thank you for having such a thorough presentation. It was great to meet you.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great night. Thank you.
You do the same thing. Enjoy the rest of the
bye-bye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the consent agenda. It has not been altered from the consent agenda that was published. I'm going to go straight to a vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda as it was published signify by saying aye. We'll begin with Commissioner Coleman.
You need a motion.
For the consent agenda. All right, I'll have a motion.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I got a motion from Commissioner Martin.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Commissioner Coleman, yay or nay?
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley.
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner Norfleet.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and that moves us to our first public hearing and ordinances, which is a request from Oakview Village Homeowners Association. They have a unique request, and I believe that staff has some backup information for us before we invite the HOA president to make a presentation. Brian, are you going to give the commission that data?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
All right, take it away, please.
Bear with me for 1 minute while I find the appropriate presentation.
This is Mr. Maltby. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Amazingly so, Rich, we can hear you. And I know we have a resolution. Do you want to go ahead and read that in now at the beginning? While Brian looks like he's close.
Very much. I appreciate that. That's what I was getting at. So thank you.
Okay.
And this is resolution 2020-32, SP 20-01, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newbury, Florida, approving an application for road closure, closing Southwest 251st Way at Southwest 15th Avenue within the Oakview Village planned development by placement of an unlocked gate across Southwest 251st Way located within the corporate limits of the City of Newbury, Florida, repealing resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Rich. Brian, are you ready now?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Take it away.
All right, thank you. The commission has seen this a little bit in the past when we discussed setting the public hearing. Since that time, we have provided public notice for this hearing tonight. We did a mail out to everybody in the Oakview Village neighborhood. We put signage at the entranceway to the three entrances to Oakview Village. And we advertised in the newspaper as required. And so our recommended action right now for the commission is to receive the presentation and then either approve with conditions, or deny resolution 2020-32. The resolution is basically a draft that would approve the request if the commission chooses to do so. So give you a little bit of background again, and also for the benefit of those that are watching online. The Homeowners Association president, Mr. Urshid, has made the request to place a gate across Southwest 15th Avenue at the far southern end. I've got some aerials and maps we'll pull up in a moment. The residents are concerned with traffic through the neighborhood, the safety of children walking to and from school. Their contention is that people are using it as a cut through to avoid the Oakview Middle School zone in the mornings and afternoons when school opens and lets out. Primary complaints are speeding, excessive traffic, and careless driving. The streets in Oakview Village are privately owned and maintained by the Homeowners Association. The city maintains public utility easements under the roads and in the right of ways. And there has been, at the request of the city of Newbury, one round of traffic monitoring and data collection that was conducted by the Alachua County Sheriff's Office back in the early part of February. Currently, there are no speed limit signs posted in the subdivision. I don't know if that would really have any effect, but they do not have any signage up, and no traffic calming methods have been attempted to try to reduce the perceived traffic problems as yet. As far as the city's authority, state statutes basically state that chartered municipalities will have jurisdiction over all streets and highways located within their boundaries. In consultation with the city attorney's office, they concur that that includes private streets as well. Further, they also are empowered to conduct law enforcement or state traffic law, enforce state traffic laws wherever the public has a right to travel by motor vehicle. And so if it's not a gated community closed to the public, it gives the municipality the right to enforce traffic laws. As far as the city code goes, section 5.26 under streets, subheading on dead end streets, basically our LDRs, our land development regulations, do not allow dead end streets in any subdivisions or anywhere, other than when you have a stub street that's intended for future connection to an adjacent development. And then the National Fire Protection Association also prohibits dead end streets where there's no turnaround at the end. If you have an excess of 150 feet and the Oakview Village situation is right at about the 150-foot mark. So there has to be a turnaround at the end, either an L or a T or a cul-de-sac for the fire apparatus to be able to navigate that turnaround. And so as far as the procedure goes, the applicant petitions to close the road, we've done that. Affidavit agree to pay the cost of advertising, done that. We have a discussion with the commission, and the commission sets the public hearing. And if the commission decides to pursue it, then they adopt a resolution setting the time certain public hearing, which is tonight. And then we publish the notices, which we've done. And then where we are right now is item step 6. At the advertised hearing, the commission either adopts the resolution closing the road or does not. If it is adopted, then we have 30 days to post a public notice that the road has been closed. And if the commission requires the construction of a cul-de-sac or other turnaround, it has to be completed within a certain time period that's stated in the resolution. Again, just some more background. This is an aerial of the neighborhood. There's access to the north. There's access off of State Road 45 headed west, and then the southern, this is the problem area that they've requested to close, is down at the southern end where it intersects with Southwest 15th Avenue. And as you can see, the State Road 45 school zone, the red school zone there, runs pretty much the whole length of the neighborhood. Again, this is yellow dotted line represents the actual property line, which is part of the reason it's difficult to provide a turnaround at the end, because they don't actually have any room to put a turnaround in. This area down south of the property line is, from our research in the records, potentially partially county right-of-way and city right-of-way. And the red bar represents where they'd like to be able to put the unlocked gate. Here's just a picture from across on the south side of Southwest 15th Avenue, looking north at the area where, again, where they'd like to gate. They've put the fencing up to the sidewalk so far. And here's my crude attempt at what a gate would look like, just to give you a visual representation of the approximate location where the gate would be if it were approved. This is inside the neighborhood looking south, from the north looking south. And again, just gives you a general idea of where about the gate would be if you were to approve the closure. And so the traffic study, they did 7 days worth of traffic analysis from January 27th through February 2nd. And basically the neighborhood speed limit, as we said, is unposted, but it is 20 miles an hour. The average speed was 12.6. The total under the speed limit was almost 98% of the total, with a little over 2% exceeding the speed limit. And within that subset, you have 5 for about 1/3% that were 10 miles an hour over the speed limit.
And Brian, this, as the date said, this study was done before shutdown,
Yes,
while
sir.
school's in session, those kinds of things.
Yes, sir. It was done prior to the lockdown, and school was still full in session. Yes, sir. To get another perspective on the data that they collected, this is vehicle counts versus the time of day. So on the y-axis over here, it's the number of vehicles. And then on the x-axis, you've got different time intervals throughout the day. And so you can see school starts, the 3 schools in the proximity to the neighborhood start between 7:45 and 8:35 in the morning. And then they end between 1:52 and 2:57. An exception to that is on Wednesdays. The elementary schools let out a little early. As you can see, you would kind of expect if there was a substantial problem in the morning, you would expect to see a lot more traffic right in the 7:45 to 8:35 time frame, and you don't really see a whole lot of extra traffic. There is a slight bump there, but it accounts for 1 or 2 cars, it looks like. When school's letting out, you've got a bit of a spike you can see here between 1:52 and 2:57, which you would expect as people are potentially using the street to cut through, or neighbors are using it to exit as well. But you can kind of see from the pattern, primarily, you've got a big push at lunch hour every day. And then, after about 5:30 to the end of the evening, you've got the rest of the typical traffic you'd expect, the after hours traffic when people get home and they're coming and going in the evening. So that's just to give you a little perspective about the school start and end issue. And so they had a total of 1,415 trips over that 7-day period. Unfortunately, there's no way to differentiate in the study between whether the counts are being conducted by residents or non-residents through the neighborhood. But to get a little bit of a feel of that, you had 46 occupied homes during the time of the study. There have been a few more built since then. On average, each home is expected to generate at least 10 trips per day. So that would equate to about 460 trips per day over the study period. There are 3 entrances, so if you average that out, you would have expected to see about 153 trips per day. And what we actually saw was an average of about 202 trips, which could be an indicator that there's non-resident traffic through the neighborhood, because it exceeds what you would expect as a very general average. And then, some of that, though, may be due to the construction activity, because the neighborhood is still under construction. And so there's quite a few workers in the air as the house construction goes on in the neighborhood. And so the Homeowners Association has proposed that they put a fence up across the southern boundary of Southwest 251st Way. It'd be a swinging gate that they would basically secure with an unlocked rod, in the street that would hold it in place when it was closed and hold it open when it was open. They propose to basically take the initiative. Someone from the homeowners association would be responsible for opening and closing the gate at different times of the day based on the perceived traffic problem times. And the gate would remain unlocked at all times so that emergency services could access it if necessary during an emergency. That's the HOA proposal. Some potential options that haven't been tried yet: placing additional traffic control signage at all the entrances, putting up the speed limit signs, watch for children. You could convert the southern end of Southwest 251st Way to a one-way exit only to limit the traffic trying to avoid the school zone in the mornings. This commission could recommend the HOA hire an actual traffic engineer firm to study the area and make a recommendation. Or the commission could decide to go ahead and allow the gate to be placed and closed 251st Way during heavy traffic hours. Or the commission could vote to close 251st Way altogether to all traffic, which any closure really at this point would not conform with the land development regulations. Based on the data collected and the analysis, staff actually recommends to deny the homeowners association request to place the gate across the road. We don't believe that the traffic analysis data that was collected by the sheriff's office supports it. In fact, if anything, it's very non-supportive. We would recommend turning the southernmost leg, that little segment, about 150-foot segment of Southwest 251st Way, into a southbound only lane. So you would have exit only onto Southwest 15th Avenue and put up appropriate signage. Allow or require the HOA to install either a raised curb and or striping in the right of way. And I've got a aerial to describe what we're talking about here to block the northbound traffic from exiting Southwest 15th Avenue. Even though it's one way, if you don't put up some sort of an obstacle, likelihood is people try to use it as a cut through anyway. And then have a developer post speed limit signs at each of the entrances into the neighborhood. And so this is a general depiction of staff's recommendation. At the southern end, you basically would stripe or curb this section. You'd have appropriate signage saying, do not enter wrong way. This would cut off the travel lane only to the southbound lane. And then, of course, like you said, posting the speed limit signs. And we recommend you put in a couple of one-way traffic signs once you reach the southern end of Southwest 251st Way. And Mr. Mayor, that concludes the staff presentation.
Ryan, are you recommending that the HOA pays for the striping and the signage? Are you recommending that the city pay for the striping and signage?
Honestly, Mr. Mayor, we haven't quite gotten to that point. Typically, that would fall on the HOA at their expense. The signage, the roadway signage and everything within the community is, because they are private roads, is the responsibility of the subdivision. It may be something that the developer would pick up because, as I said, it is still under development. There's still quite a few lots being built upon. And then it might be something on the southern end here if we're doing striping or something that the city maybe helps participate in. I'd have to defer that to the city manager or the utilities director or the public works director on how that might work. But typically, if it's in the right of way, this area that is outlined in yellow there for striping is part of the public right of way, and so it'd be the responsibility ultimately of the city eventually.
Okay. Does that conclude the staff's presentation recommendation?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it does.
Okay. I know we have the president of the HOA here with us tonight. But before we go there, does the commission have any questions for staff? and I can't see all of you at one time, so feel free to, oh, now I can. Anybody waving at me? Any questions, or are you ready to hear from Commissioner Martin?
Brian, do you happen to know where ASO was posted up to do these studies? Was it more than one place, or what?
Mr. Mayor, as far as I know, it was a single speed spy that they placed. I don't know the exact location of it. It would just be a guess. They didn't provide us with that information, I don't believe.
Brian, I can't say with 100% certainty, but I have an idea. If you'll put the that last slide back up, it was on that segment that's approaching the little circle roundabout on the south end of the development. And it was just the speed spy. It's a little box that they would put up on the side of the road. So it's not particularly, it's not particularly obvious to the motoring public. Brian, somewhere north of the that intersection of
Leave it right there, Brian.
251st Way, somewhere right just north of where your cursor is, somewhere right in there.
Right in here. Okay. Yeah, this I kind of assumed they might have placed it somewhere in this vicinity because that's not a buildable lot area. That's common. It's open space, common area.
One other question. Has staff, Brian, have you had a chance to go over this with Mr. Urchet?
Mr. Mayor, we've discussed it a little bit with the HOA Association. We haven't gone any further than what's been put into the presentation.
Okay, we're hearing from him next, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor, just to Commissioner Martin's question, I would say that I discussed it with Naeem at one point, probably before the first public hearing, that staff thought that was a better way to go, but not subsequent to that conversation.
And just for full disclosure, I attended an HOA meeting with, I don't know, about 30, 40 residents from the homeowner association. We didn't have staff's recommendations at that time, but we did have a conversation of the commission's view and questions and concerns from the last meeting. So if there aren't any questions for staff, I'm going to go to Naeem. And Naeem, I'm going to give you a few minutes to make a presentation. I just ask that you remember we have 2 quasi-judicials in this meeting, and we have a Board of Adjustment meeting after this meeting. So if you could kind of keep it, give the commission a brief summary of what your HOA is requesting and what you're offering to mitigate some of their concerns. We can't hear you, Naeem.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
All right, perfect. All right. Well, first off, thank you very much to staff and to you, Mr. Mayor, and the commissioners for having me. So the last meeting we had, I take everything you guys give me as constructive criticism, as suggestions, and I take it and I run with it, and I address the concerns at hand. So to get to some of the concerns, one of the things that kind of sat not well with me was hearing that we had some residents that weren't aware that it was going to be a manual gate, that they were under the impression it would be an electronic gate. So I did call for an HOA meeting. I sent out an email and I put it on our Facebook forum as well, advising them, hey, that's, any questions you have, any concerns, please, let's address them. So what we've come to the conclusion of, at first, remember, guys, we wanted to make this a dead end street. You guys came back saying, hey, listen, let's not do a dead end. It's not going to work out. Why don't we try a gate option? So we took that and ran with it. We loved the idea. Then we decided to keep costs down, to keep the risk down. What would be the next best option? And it'll be a manual gate, just to see how it goes, how it deters the traffic. In that meeting, it was pretty unanimous. It actually was unanimous that those residents in phase 2, even a couple that did state to me that they thought it was going to be electronic, actually concurred and agreed to the fact of trying the manual gate out. And what I mean by trying the manual gate out, guys, is this is a gate that we implied that during certain peak hours only, we would have it closed. We were going to suggest a volunteer to do it. You guys know me well, and I feel like you guys trust me enough that I put it on. I work from home indefinitely. I'm usually up in that morning anyways, going for my walk and jog. I will be the one that will open and close it during the morning hours, and and at lunch I can go and close it. That way there's no depending on anybody else. There's no other real volunteers other than me opening and closing it. The last thing we want to do is pretty much put anybody in an inconvenience in phase 2. And in doing so, that's why I would be the one to make sure that it's open, especially during those times that I know residents are coming home from work on that end. We would decide after a year of seeing how it goes. If it's become too much, we would then look at entertaining an electronic option, a timer that we can have it open and close during certain times of the day that we agreed on versus having it manual. But at right now, this is the cheapest cost that we can associate with as the HOA to do. So at that meeting that the mayor attended, it was pretty solid that everybody understood that it was a manual, and they all actually agreed to saying, hey, we want to do this gate, even if it is just for certain times at the moment, and see where it goes from there. In regards to, just so I can kind of reiterate what I just heard about the one-way sounds amazing. However, that will do more impact to those residents in phase 2 that use that route at 5 o'clock to get home from work, coming from Archer Road or wherever southbound they're coming from. So now they would be forced to go around versus being able to utilize that entrance. The whole point is to be able to utilize that entrance for our residents and just close it during certain hours of the day, which is really school hours. So with that being said, that's why I really didn't want to entertain the one-way, because I feel that would have more of a negative impact than actually having a gate that we could open and close as we wish. And like Mr. Mayor, we discussed at that meeting, we would be during certain times, and if it works out better, we can leave it open more. If it doesn't, we can implement different timing. But I wanted to address that everything that you brought up last time, I wanted to make sure that our residents were aware of, and there was no questions on the table. That's one thing from me that you can always expect, is I like to get everything out there.
All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Does the commission have any questions for Naeem about what the HOA is proposing? Manually opening and shutting the gate during certain peak times, mornings and afternoons, primarily when school is in session. Any questions for Naeem? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Commissioner Martin.
Naeem, what was your take on the data that he's showing? Because the data, although it is a sample and just kind of a snapshot, it doesn't suggest that there's a problem in the morning, which I felt was kind of your catalyst to bring this up kind of to begin with. That's part A. And part B, the data actually kind of suggests that the afternoon, let's say lunch aside, after 2 o'clock, after 3 o'clock, it becomes pretty busy, and that would be the time to close it. Following along the whole idea of it inconvenience people having to go around, how are you kind of weighing that in your mind as how the inconvenience of getting in and out of a gate would pose for them as well?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that, for addressing that. So the data that we received that 1 week of showing, we were a little shocked because of the stuff we've actually witnessed ourselves. One of the reasons that we didn't want to go with the stripes or a sign or anything like that was because literally we had construction people present one day, and I was down there talking to the builder, and we had an SUV literally drive onto the landscape of our builder's house. We had several witnesses watch this. We called it into ASO, actually drive through his lawn to cut around the traffic because he wanted to use our way as a cut through. But back to the data question. The morning still kind of surprised us because of the fact that I get, when school is going on, I can show you messages of people texting me or sending me Facebook messages saying, hey, I just witnessed about 3 people go against traffic and cut through your neighborhood. But I'm not gonna go against the traffic study. Now, in regards to the afternoon would strictly be during those peak times. It wouldn't be anything after 3:30 or 4 o'clock, because that we want to respect the times that people get home. We don't want them getting in and out of their car. I don't want them getting in and out of their car to open up a gate. It's not about inconvenience. It's about this literally comes down to saving our private road that we pay for and maintain. If something were to happen to these roads, Mr. Mayor, we are ultimately responsible. I can't call Brian at the city and say, hey, I have a pothole. This is coming out of my funds as an HOA president, and I have to justify why we're paying out of pocket for these things that people are just using as they wish. So with that being said, the afternoon seems to be the biggest time. However, that 4 to 5 span, you could tell there's a lot of people that live in phase 2. Well, back then, that was the only thing that's questionable was there was only 10 houses back then. And to say that it was the construction guys going in and out of that area, I don't know about you guys that live in Newbury, but I don't know any lunch spots that are south of our neighborhood. They're all north of our neighborhood. So if they were sitting in our neighborhood and wanting to go to the Quick Mark or wherever, they would be from where they're at going north, not using that south entrance to get in and out. So that traffic study kind of shows me a little bit more of the afternoon crowd. From what I'm hearing from teachers that actually live in our neighborhood, around 3:30 is usually a good time that the high school students like to take off, because they're usually hanging out or doing something else before they take off from the school parking lot or the fields.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, and we talked about this at the HOA meeting a little bit, and I believe that we may be experiencing a bit of a time lapse here. When the neighborhood particularly noticed the issue, phase 2 was almost all under construction, and so it probably was easier to take that as a cut through. Now that phase 2 is almost all built out, and you've got people parking on the street, you've got there's a narrowing effect with all those houses in there. I'm not sure, and that's when the study was done, I'm not sure that the issue is going to continue. However, that being said, the neighborhood was unanimous about wanting to try this out. And in my view, it's a relatively low risk experiment. So the neighborhood wants it. They've already purchased the fence. There's nothing saying they can't have the fence there. And what they're basically asking is to hang a couple of field gates they're asking for a year. You can give them 6 months. You can give them the year just to try it out and see if there's an issue. If there is an issue, it would literally take about 10 minutes to pop those gates off, put them on the back of the trailer, haul them away, and the road is open again. And what the HOA is asking is all at their expense. So the city commission isn't out anything on that proposal. So, that's kind of where we are. And that's the time lapse of having this conversation while that neighborhood is actually under construction. So let's go back to the commission, see if anybody else has any more questions for staff or for Naeem. If there aren't, I think we're ready to entertain a motion, and then we'll move to public comment on whatever motion is put on the floor. Is any commissioner ready to make a motion?
I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve, Commissioner Farnsworth.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Coleman. Okay, so I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second for Commissioner Coleman. Now, let's just verify for the record, since we're on Zoom, what are we motioning to approve? Are we motioning to approve staff's recommendation, which is for denial? Are we motioning to approve the HOA's request, which is for the gate? Commissioner Farnsworth, can you just be clear for me here?
Yes, motion is to approve the HOA request for a gate.
Okay, Commissioner Coleman, is that your second?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a motion properly seconded to approve the HOA's request to shut down. And Commissioner Farnsworth, did you want to put a time limit as a trial of 6 months or a year on this request?
I did not.
Okay, so the HOA's request is for a year, so that would be inherent in your motion. You're fine with that, Commissioner Farnsworth?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I believe then that would reflect the proposed resolution as written. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I do not believe that the proposed resolution has any restriction on a time frame or anything like that.
So
That's
we would
correct.
put that into the resolution. Okay,
So the motion would be to approve the resolution as presented.
with the addition of the 1 year time frame. As a trial. Rich?
Okay, is that Commissioner Farnsworth's motion?
I just asked him and he said yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I did not hear that. Okay, so yes, so the resolution would be with the condition of
No.
1 year.
No, I said, as
No
written.
time frame.
You
No
like
time
the
frame.
resolution as written? Because the HOA
As
is asking
written.
for a 12-month time frame.
As written, if somebody wants to make an amendment to the motion, they can, but I approved it as written.
As written. No time frame, no experiment. Just let them do it. And Commissioner Coleman, that's your second.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We have a motion properly seconded to approve the HOA's request with no conditions for a time limit. Commissioner Coleman, you have a question?
Well, I don't want to involve staff no more than what we got to on this, and I don't think it needs a time frame. Personally, I don't think this is going to work anyway, but nothing ventured is nothing gained. I think we're going to get tired of it, but it is a private road, even though that they have to go through us. I mean, personally, I think they should all get together. If they're wanting to be in a gated subdivision, they need to, go that route, but obviously they must not have the money. But, and I'm going to vote for it, but actually I don't think it's going to last long, but
you're not putting that in part of, that's not your second.
No, I just, I wanted to speak out. I do understand what's going on. I lived in a neighborhood before one time now. And one time that was a HOA and then having to deal with the roads and all. And that's where I see it for the president of the HOA is that, you get so much traffic and come on, man, I know what's happened there. It's in the afternoons, they're tired of it. They want to bypass that school zone, morning, afternoon. I know that the way the results did not work out, but it only takes one flying through there and it's pretty narrow. So I'm in support of it, but I just don't think it's going to work unless they have true gates and timers. So that's where I'm at.
Any other commissioner comments to the motion on the floor?
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner, hang on one second, Mike. Commissioner Martin.
My only concern is public safety for a fire truck to be able to get through there. And I mean, in the bottom line, it still goes against the LDRs at the moment.
Okay. Brian, are you trying to get in?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to point out, it is in the resolution that there's a 2-year review period built into the resolution. And then also too, staff's primary reason for not being in favor of putting that gate there without a turnaround at the end is number one, emergency services not being able to turn around quickly. And number two, we also see the potential for people who aren't familiar with the neighborhood, they pull in there, or you have a gate that's open sometimes, closed sometimes. So you never quite, even if you live there, you never quite know when it's going to be open or closed for sure. You pull down, you get stuck, and then you back up. Potential for a pedestrian, a kid to step out behind the car as it's backing up. We just kind of consider it not to be the safest and wisest choice, especially given that no other mitigation efforts have been attempted. It's kind of going further than we think is warranted without further data and analysis, whatever the commission
Thank you,
chooses.
Brian. Commissioner McKinley and then Mike.
I have serious concerns about this, as I have from the beginning. When I did ride through there recently, I was shocked to see no speed limit signs, as was pointed out by Brian Thomas earlier. And the data, and I would just caution the commission on this, the data does not support this. Less than 3% going over the speed limit. So there's really not a hazard there. I mean, when you see that, as I said, the data does not support the claim. We're going to set a precedent and going against our own standards, and this is going to come back to bite us later if we're not careful. And think about what we're asking here. We're asking for a gate to be installed and managed by a homeowner. I've pointed this out in the past on other subdivisions and standards that we've set there, but the average homeowner in Florida is about 8 years. In 8 years, that's going to be a completely different subdivision with the majority of the homes in there is going to be owned by different homeowners. And we're setting a precedent that some of them may not want a gate or a one-way exit out of the subdivision. And my concern is not 6 months from now or 1 year from now. I mean, and I don't mean any disrespect with this at all, but if I wanted to prove that this was going to work, I can make it work for 6 months or for a year. My concern is what's going to happen with the next set of homeowners there. And I picture this, one day it's just going to be a gate that's closed and forgotten about. I am not in favor of this. And I think the commission really needs to think about this. If there was a traffic study to support it, I think there could be a better answer, but it's just not there. And the hours that they want to close it, it's not supporting, the data is not supporting that at all. And so I'm just not in favor of this. And that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. Mike, would you make your comments, and will you also address Commissioner Martin's concerns that right now this is not allowed under our LDRs? How would we plan to handle that if the commission wants to grant this? Go ahead, Mr. New.
Thank you, Jordan. I first wanted to point out that the resolution as written did have a 2-year sunset on it to make sure that there was clarity there. If I think the most important thing to consider is that the commission is contemplating violating its own LDRs. Generally, staff would recommend that if we don't like the LDRs that are written, that the commission direct us to rewrite the LDR so that whatever decision made is compliant with LDRs. I'll let the city attorney maybe weigh in, but typically if the commission does violate its own LDRs, the risk is if someone objects and then kind of holds the commission's feet to the fire by asking the court to take action to require the commission to side with its own LDRs or to modify their LDRs before they make such a decision. I doubt seriously that someone would make that objection. I think probably the bigger liability is a point that I don't know if it's Commissioner McKinley or Brian made. If we allow the public to enter the subdivision through one of the other 2 entrances, and they make their way through the subdivision because they don't know that this gate is going to be closed, and they get there and the gate's closed, they're going to have to back up 150 feet to get to the first place to turn around. Now, I've been in that subdivision and I see that generally there's street parking. So this back up 150 feet is likely going to have 2 cars parked on either side of the road to maneuver. And if you've ever been stopped in traffic where you need to back up, there's that rare occasion when you get ready to back up and there's somebody behind you who doesn't want to back up, who wants you to go forward. So I anticipate that somewhere in this 2-year period, this is going to happen a time or two. And I think that it is something that the commission should consider when they move forward on this. I'd refer them to Fire Chief Buckner's memorandum, where he outlines what our code says about it and what would be compliant. I think there are ways to get around it. We've offered one suggestion. There's probably 2 or 3 more. If all the gates were closed and it were just private streets, I think that would be fine. But we're allowing the public through the plat to enter the subdivision. And when they get 90% of the way through, we're putting up a gate and telling them you're going to have to back up to get yourself turned around and exit the subdivision. One of our other commissioners pointed out that anytime an individual becomes responsible for opening and closing gates, there's bound to be failure. I just tell you that in my experience in city government, that happens. We have individuals responsible for closing and locking bathrooms every evening. We have individuals responsible for locking the gates to the cemetery every evening. And we never go a 365-day period where we don't have a failure as a result of that. Generally, it's not the end of the world, but we have those failures. They come to our attention because somebody got it in a pinch about it, and they say this shouldn't have happened. We reassess and we realize that as long as we're doing it on someone's got, as part of their job responsibility, a person's got to think about it and do it. We have those failures. So I just wanted to point that out to the commission before they move forward with their vote on this issue.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We will have public comment on this, but right now we have a motion properly seconded on the floor. The seconder of the motion doesn't think that this is going to be a successful idea, but is willing to let it move forward. We've had some folks say we shouldn't set this precedent, and staff has clearly delineated that we are breaking our own LDRs. Commissioner Coleman.
I amend my second to the 6 months trial instead of 2 years.
We would need the maker of the motion to amend the motion to a 6-month trial instead of. Commissioner Farnsworth, would you be willing to amend your motion?
I'll amend my motion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for a 6-month trial that is now properly seconded. Any other comments from the commission? Commissioner Norfleet, you have any thoughts on this before we go to the public?
No, not right off hand.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the first public hearing. It's a request by Oakview Village Homeowners Association. They'd like to shut down their the southbound entrance to their division for certain times of the day. We have a motion to allow them to do that with a manual gate for a 6-month period of time. It has been properly seconded. If you would like to speak to that motion on the floor, at this point, you're seeing a phone number on your screen.
Mr. Mayor, while we are waiting, as city attorney, I know that Manager New had invited maybe some comment from the city attorney on this. I just want to offer very briefly, I do think he makes a point in terms of there being some kind of potential basis for a legal challenge, arguing that the LDRs haven't been followed properly in this case. I would also say that it's kind of an interesting legal issue because the relief being sought on something like this would probably be more in the nature of injunctive relief, where a particular citizen may be requesting a judge to order that the gate be taken down. That probably would not happen as quickly as the person filing that type of lawsuit would want that type of relief. So it would probably give the city some time to reassess, evaluate, determine the strength of the claim, and potentially cure it if we think there is an issue. But to Manager New's point, he certainly does point out that there could be a claim. How that plays out in court would be a little bit speculative as we sit here right now, but that is a risk.
Okay, Rich, you messed up my whole public comment spiel here, but that's okay. I'm gonna forgive you. I gave us a 30-second window there. I mean, it's probably more like 65 actually, but at this point, you for sure are seeing on your screen a phone number. If you'd like to call in and make a comment, or you have a question on the motion on the floor, which if you've forgotten now, is for the Newberry or Oakview Village's request to shut down the southbound entrance. The commission has made a motion and it has seconded to allow them to do that for a 6-month period of time with a manual gate. All you need to do is call that phone number. At the bottom, we'll get you in the meeting. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That's going to let us know that you have a question or comment to make, and we'll get you all queued up. Dallas, do we have anybody with their hand raised?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. We're going to start with Sherry Starbird.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Starbird, for joining us tonight. You're in the meeting. Go ahead. You have 2 minutes. Ms. Starbird?
Ms. Starbird, you're going to need to unmute yourself.
Ms. Starbird? Okay, Dallas, let's go to the next person. Maybe Ms. Starbird will get her audio working.
All right, we're going to move on to the person whose phone number ends in 223. Please go ahead.
Please come into the meeting.
That would
Introduce
be
yourself.
Hi, this is Sherry Starbird. I was the one that was holding. I cannot figure out how to get Zoom to allow me to speak via that that functionality. I'm sorry, I'm used to Teams. Can you hear me okay?
You're in the meeting. We can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. As a resident and the vice president of the HOA, I understand that there are some legalities that have to be addressed. What I do want to point out, and what most people don't seem to realize, as somebody mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of street parking. I myself and many residents, as Naeem has mentioned, have run into situations at odd hours where people are just using it as a cut through, and we're getting a myriad of traffic, people that don't live here. And when you live in a small community like this, you need to understand that we know the cars, we know the people, we know the residents. My concern at this point is that we have had small children walking down the street with their parents, and cars have gone by at very high speeds. It makes the parents very concerned. We have people walking their dogs. That's also an extreme risk as well. Personally, as somebody mentioned, living here for 8 years, I've been a resident of Gainesville for going on 20 years now, and I just moved to Newbury 3 years ago with a 20-year mortgage. I plan on being here, so I want it to be safe. I'm also concerned about this concept of not putting up a fence and putting in the painting of the lines, I think that the planning mentioned. However, the one thing that I did want to point out is that I believe that area that he's referring to belongs to the city, so that would not, in my mind, be a HOA expense. We're trying to keep costs down to our residents, as well as maintain a safe facility for them to live, as well as having community areas where we can join. Multiple families will meet up in the middle of the street. It's not an uncommon thing here. I appreciate all of the, what did you call it, the single spine and the time studies and things like that. But if you're not here and living here on a regular basis, you don't understand the things that we have been seeing on a regular. Due to the location where I'm at, there are areas that are blind spots as well.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Sherry. We appreciate your comment. All right,
Mr.
Dallas,
Mayor,
please take us to the next
is Ms. Linda Woodcock.
Okay. Ms. Linda, you're in the meeting. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I've got you loud and clear. Go ahead, ma'am. You have 2 minutes.
I did that unmute button. Okay. I still think that as we're looking at all this, one thing, we need a traffic light signal at the end of 15th there. We all know that. So that's a waste of time right now to talk about it. But putting up signs, slow, careful for children, speed bumps, I think all of those things need to be tried before we decide to put up a gate. And I agree with Commissioner McKinley too, or with the city manager. When you have one person or 3 people or 6 people in charge of this gate and they get sick, they go to Montana for a week, whatever, they're not there. They're not there to do the job. So you're depending on the public to take care of it. But I do think that trying the speed zones, speed bumps, cautions, whatever, that I don't know how people are getting on and off of 45. Either way, it's a nightmare at that time of day, which we're talking about. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate that comment. Dallas, will you take us to the next?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The next is Antoinette Snell.
Okay. Antoinette, you're in the meeting. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We've got you loud and clear. Go ahead. You can address
Okay.
the commission for 2 minutes.
So I am a homeowner who lives north of this development, and I understand where the residents are coming from as far as their concerns with regard to the morning traffic specifically, because when I take my child to Newbury Elementary School, I do see people drive into oncoming traffic to make the left into that subdivision so that they can cut through for their morning commute or wherever it is they're going. But overall, everything that was presented tonight, it more so seems like the HOA is just interested in stopping general traffic from coming through their neighborhood. And if that's the case, why don't you just gate the whole thing? Because if you let the public in, as someone mentioned earlier, and you come down to a dead end, because I'm not going to know what times the gates open or not. And I try to be as courteous as I can when I drive through there, because like I said, I am a mother. I'm not out here trying to endanger construction workers, children, anyone who's on the road. But it seems like this is more of a measure to get the OVV people to stop driving on the OVV road. And if that's the case, it seems like you should just gate the whole thing if you don't want us in there. And that's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Miss Antoinette. We appreciate that comment. Dallas, please let the next person in.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes the comments.
Okay. Being no more public comment, we will go back and once again.
Mr. Mayor, we have a person who's raised their hand at the last moment.
All right.
That's the phone number that ends in 699.
The phone number that ends in 699. Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you please introduce yourself to the commission?
My name is Dave Sudak. I've been living in this subdivision for 4 years, and I do see people driving through the neighborhood who do not live here, speeding, having confrontations with people in the neighborhood as well. About driving through, speeding, and giving obscenities to people who live in the neighborhood. I heard one lady talk about people like cutting through the other lane to try to turn into our neighborhood to cut through. And isn't that a hazard in itself? People trying to go into the other lane to try to make that turn into our neighborhood. I mean, that seems like a risk right there. I mean, I agree with the other lady as far as shutting down the whole road, but as I understand it, that means it's a gated community. I just think it's a hazard. And since it's a private road and we pay the HOA for the subdivision, it seems like we should be able to control the road. I know people think, shutting off the road is cutting off access to other people, but we're the ones who pay the HOA and we're the ones who live here. And it's putting the people who live here at risk. And I believe the people who do not live here should not have a say in what we do in our community. They do not pay the HOA. They do not pay any of the dues, and they do not see what we see every day living here as far as people using that roadway. Big trucks come through here too and damage the roads, and we have to maintain the roads. We're the ones paying for the roads as well. They're not paying for the roads. So why should we allow them to just come and use our roads as far as I'm concerned?
Okay, thank you, sir. We appreciate that comment. Dallas, do we have anybody else with their hand raised?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we're going to come back to the commission. We're going to close public comment at this point, come back to the commission. The motion on the floor is to allow the HOA to have a 6-month trial period with these manual gates to see how it goes. Now, a vote in favor would give them that opportunity. If this motion fails, then someone else can make a motion to adopt one of the other options that the staff has presented. Commissioner McKinley, do you have a question or a further comment on the motion on the floor?
I do have a further comment. Upon hearing the vice president of the HOA, I believe that's what she said her title was.
Correct.
I do agree that if this motion failed, I would be willing to make a second motion for a one-way exit out of that that southbound, and for the city to pay for that the stripes to be painted. I think she made a very valid point there, and I think that fixes the problem. I mean, that's where people are cutting through. They're coming off of that road there, cutting through the subdivision. Again, I just think a fence there is that will be open sometimes, closed sometimes, is a bad idea. And I'd be willing to make that motion and for the city to pick up the bill on the painting there, and even the signage if possible. I don't even know if we're setting a precedent with that, but I hear what they're saying, and I'm willing to make that motion.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other comments on the motion on the floor from the dais? Okay, if not, I'm going to go to a roll call vote. Just to mix it up, we're going to go backwards. Commissioner Norfleet.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Martin.
No.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley.
No.
Commissioner Coleman. We have 2 ayes and 2 nays, Commissioner Coleman. How was that vote? So I picked the wrong one to go backwards on. I apologize.
I still have I just want to make a comment. I don't. The problem I have is liability. The liability for the city of Newbury. I know I seconded this, and I'm probably going to make some people in that neighborhood upset, but we went through the same problem, not identical, but over in Newberry Oaks. I want them to have what they want, but the situation is, the more I've been listening to this, it's not fair for all. When we made Newberry Oaks go through tons of different formulas before we got to a solution. That's where I'm at. I mean, it's opened my eyes on some of this. It's a private road, and that's the only thing that's holding me from saying, they need to do it. But I'm gonna go with the pastor on this one, and I'll be the guy to second it on Commissioner McKinley. At least try the single one way, and I'm gonna vote no on this.
Okay, that's 3-2. The motion fails. And I'm going to suggest that before we entertain another motion, because I think the HOA has their own considerations here, let's table any more conversation on this tonight. Let's let the HOA regroup, look at the options that the city staff presented, and decide which of those options they're the most comfortable with. Let them work with staff if they want to proceed on any of those, and then come back on another regularly scheduled agenda. Okay. That is going to move us. And ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that I skipped right over public comment. We normally like to have public comment at the beginning of a meeting. So if you have something you're trying to announce to the commission, you have an opportunity to do that before we get into the meat and potatoes of our meeting. So I want to apologize to anybody who has been waiting, but I'm going to pause on our public hearings and ordinances and go back to that. Again, we've got about a 30-second delay for those folks at home. So these are 2-minute comments. They're the non-controversial kind. If you've got a garage sale or something coming up that you want to let the commission know about, you want to let the folks in Newbury know about, all you need to do is call the number on your screen right now. We'll get you into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, raise your little hand, click the little hand symbol at the bottom of your screen. That'll let us know that you have a comment to make. These don't have to be about anything that's on the agenda. It can be anything that you want, and you have 2 minutes to do so. Dallas, do we have anybody with their hand raised?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. By my clock, that's been about 50 seconds. So if we don't have anybody, please come back to the commission. And we are going to move on to item 6, our first quasi-judicial. Before we do that, Commissioner McKinley.
Just a statement of privilege, please, just for a moment, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make it plain. I had every intention of making that motion. I do want to respect your decision with that. So at the proper time, maybe at another meeting, I definitely want to make sure this is revisited. And I want to stay true to my word to those homeowners, because I do think that the one-way exit at that south entrance would be a good answer for stopping traffic. So I just wanted to go on record and make that statement. I did not want anyone to think that we just moved past that without addressing it.
Absolutely. And I will make sure I call on you if it comes back to an agenda. I just don't want us to start down a path that the HOA doesn't actually want us to do anyway. So
I understand. I understand.
That. Okay, and that's going to move us to our first quasi-judicial tonight, which is second reading of ordinance 2020-20 to allow existing electric utility service lines to remain above ground at the Alachua County Agricultural and Equestrian Event Center. According to our established procedures, once we enter into a quasi-judicial, if nobody new enters the meeting, then I'm not going to go through these procedures again. So Dallas, I'm going to depend on you to let me know if anyone new has entered the proceedings. The first thing I'm going to do is ask Rich if you would please go ahead and read the ordinance into the record, and then we'll go through our ex parte and swearing in and the procedures for the quasi-judicial. Rich, are you still with us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-20, an ordinance of the City of Newbury, Florida, pursuant to Article 4 of the City of Newbury Land Development Regulations as amended, relating to amendments to the adopted development order number 19-01, pursuant to an application by the property owner to amend the Canterbury Plan Development PD to allow existing electric service lines to remain above ground on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newbury, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Rich. Now, when we're in quasi-judicial, ladies and gentlemen, the commission moves from a legislative body to a judicial body. So it's really important to explain the rules concerning testimony. And primarily, that's all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. At this time, I'd like to ask the commission if you have any ex parte that you need to disclose just for this agenda item. Commissioner Coleman.
None.
Commissioner McKinley.
No.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
No.
Commissioner Martin.
No.
Commissioner Norfleet.
No.
I'm a non-voting mayor, but I have nothing to disclose as well. At this time, I'm going to ask our clerk if she'll swear everyone in. So, Ms. Judy, if you could get your computer off of mute. Ladies and gentlemen, the swearing in a Zoom meeting is always a little bit awkward. If you would, please click the hand symbol at the bottom of your screen saying you're raising your hand, and then Dallas can make sure that we get everyone sworn in. Ms. Judy's going to read the oath. If you would say your name and that you swear or you don't swear for the record for us, please. Miss Judy, and let's begin with, is it going to be Brian as our, are you going to be giving this? Let's use Brian as a guinea pig.
Okay, we're going to do this I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Can we just do it all at 5?
You just read the oath one time, and then we'll go through all the people with their hand raised, and they'll say their name and that they do.
Okay. Do you hereby swear or affirm the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Brian Thomas, I do.
Ryan Thompson, I do.
You have been duly sworn.
Unmute yourself, Mr. Raymond.
Ramon Gavarrete, I do.
Thank you, sir.
You're
And
duly sworn.
Ms. Peebles, that was you, the last one?
How about Miss Monique? There's a Monique Heath.
Okay.
Oh.
Ms. Monique, did you say I do?
I do.
Okay. Thank you so much. Did we get everybody, Dallas?
Yes, sir. I believe so.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you all for doing that. Okay, guys, tonight what we're going to do in a quasi-judicial is we'll hear from our staff with an overview first. Then the applicant will give a presentation. There's no time limit. Then we'll hear from our staff with their presentation and recommendation, also with no time limit. I've not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim third-party intervener status, so that's going to move us straight to public comment. Anyone in the public will have 3 minutes to make a comment on this item. Then the applicant have the ability to cross-examine. Staff will also have the ability to cross-examine. And then the members of the decision-making body, through the chair, may ask questions of the staff, the applicant, or the participants. Then we'll hear final arguments from the applicant and the staff, and the city attorney will then advise the decision-making body as to the applicable law and the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application. Then we will move into deliberations, and after deliberations, a vote should be taken to approve with conditions, continue, or deny the application. That's the procedure we're going to follow tonight, and therefore we will begin with the staff overview. Brian, feel free to share your screen and take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One moment, please. I'll find the correct presentation. There we go. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the second reading of Ordinance 2020-20, LDR 20-01 for the Alachua County Equestrian and Agricultural Events Center. CHW Incorporated as the agent for Alachua County, which is the owner and applicant. Basically, it's an application, as you've seen before, to allow for the existing electric service to remain above ground. The original development order language called for the undergrounding of all development or all utilities. At the time that was contemplated that the equestrian center was going to be ultimately eliminated and replaced, redeveloped as a mixed-use commercial and residential development. In the interim, as you know, the county has purchased property and is renovating it for an agricultural and equestrian center, and have requested, because there's a fair amount of existing electrical system above ground that serves the facility, to allow that to remain above ground, and it will save the residents of Alachua County approximately $100,000. I have coordinated with Mr. Thompson. If it pleases the commission, the applicant, CHW, as it is the second reading, said that they'd be happy if staff went through their overview and report. And then if the commission had any questions, he's there, standby, as is Ms. Heathcock, to answer any questions from the applicant. And so if it pleases the mayor and the commission, I'll go ahead and go through the staff report in lieu of turning it over to the applicant's agent.
If they agree, we agree as well. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, as you're all very familiar, it's the formerly the Canterbury Equestrian Center, located in the front of the Newbury Oaks subdivision on State Road, north side of State Road 26. Again, aerial shot of the facilities. Basically, we went through the language in the development order with the applicant and reworded certain areas that would allow for the existing service lines to remain above ground in about 3 different areas. And then this is a slight change. The staff at this point is recommending that if the commission is in favor of enacting, that they make a motion to approve ordinance 2020-20, conditioned upon the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners approval of capping the city's expenses to extend water and wastewater utilities to the agricultural center site and the cooperative extension offices at $175,000. All of this has been part of an ongoing negotiation. We think we're there, but since the county commission has not had an opportunity to approve this yet, staff's recommending conditional approval at this time. And that, Mr. Mayor, concludes the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And we don't have an applicant, so we're going to go straight to public comment. Dallas, if you would put our telephone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in our first quasi-judicial hearing of the evening. This is the quasi-judicial about the public utilities at Canterbury site. We are at public comment. And Dallas, are we able to get that? There it is. So for our 30-second delay, you should be, if you're watching this home at YouTube, you should be momentarily seeing a phone number come up on your screen. If you'd like to call in and make a comment about this is the second reading of this ordinance. All you simply need to do is call that phone number on your screen. Once we get you into the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. Click on that hand symbol. We'll know that you have a question or comment, and we'll get you into the meeting. By my clock, that's been about 45 seconds. Dallas, do we have anybody with their hand raised?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, slowly take us back to the commission. Applicant, I know you didn't make a presentation, but did you hear anything in our presentation that you'd like to question or cross-examine?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, I don't have any additional information, and we're in full agreement with staff and their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm assuming staff doesn't want to cross-examine themselves, so I'm going to move to the commission. Does anybody have any questions for Brian? Questions about the process, questions about the project, or the motion? Commissioner Martin.
I was just wondering about the timeline turnaround to get this in front of the Alachua board.
I think it's this week. Is that right, Mr. New? Mr. New? Maybe Miss Peebles can unmute herself.
Okay.
Oh, we got it.
Yes, Gina Peebles, Chief of Staff. And the county commission is expected to hear this tomorrow at our 11:30 regular board meeting.
There you go. Good turnaround.
Great. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Brian, do you want to make a final argument? You don't have to if you want to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney, would you please advise the decision-making body?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are again governed by the substantial and competent evidence standard based on the testimony and evidence that we've heard from the witnesses, including the staff's report and the evidence that's submitted in the report.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, that takes us to deliberations. If the commission does not have any deliberations, we'll entertain a motion to approve with conditions, continue, or deny. Is anyone ready to make a motion? Commissioner Martin.
I move to approve as recommended.
I have a motion to approve as recommended. I have a second from Commissioner Coleman. Okay, I have a motion that's properly seconded to approve staff's recommendation. Any questions from the dais on the motion on the floor? Commissioner Coleman.
Mr. Mayor, how much is this doing this is going to save us? What's the total that staff's actually, it's going to help us out here money wise?
Mr. New, I'm not quite sure I understand the question. It's going to save the county commission by putting it underground. Is that what you're asking? Or is it going to save the city of Newbury?
So, I thought in a past discussion, it was going to save us some money on that.
I think the
I
savings
might be wrong.
the county, but Mr. New.
Mayor, we asked county staff if they had any preliminary indication on what the savings would be. And I think it's been characterized as it would save the taxpayers. But the estimation is that by permitting them to not underground the existing electric, that they would save upwards of $100,000.
Okay. That's it. That's what I want to know.
For everybody in Alachua County. Commissioner Martin?
Well, and I would also just put forth that all the Newberry citizens are also Alachua citizens as well. So those monies are partly ours as well that we're saving the county.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments on behalf of the commission on the dais? If not, Dallas, would you please put up our telephone number? Ladies and gentlemen, we are on new item 6. It's second reading of ordinance 2020-20. This is about Canterbury and about allowing the county to amend that underground utility agreement. We're at the end of this quasi judicial. We have a motion properly seconded on the floor to approve it. You should, at this point in time, have a telephone number on your screen. If you'd like to call in and make a comment or you have a question about this motion on the floor, simply call that number. We'll get you into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. Simply click that symbol. That will let us know that you have a question or a comment, and we'll get you into the queue. And that's about 47 seconds. Dallas, do we have anybody with their hand raised?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, take us back to the commission then. And in keeping with going backwards, we're going to start with Commissioner Norfleet. Aye or nay?
Aye.
Commissioner Martin?
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley?
Aye.
Commissioner Coleman?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all, county employees, for joining us. We appreciate CHX as well. Thank you so much. CHW, I'm sorry. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful evening. And that's going to move us
Thank you.
to next quasi judicial. And just so the folks at home know, I'm having a little bit of technological difficulty here on my end. Commissioner Coleman is our mayor pro tem, and staff have been notified they're ready to take over for me if for any reason I drop out of the meeting. So I do apologize for that. Hopefully my feed lasts. Dallas, have we had anybody else enter the meeting since we read the quasi-judicial proceeding?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Wonderful. Well, then I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to begin by asking Rich to read this ordinance into the record for us, 2020-21.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-21, an ordinance of the city of Newbury, Florida, pursuant to Article 4 of the City of Newbury Land Development Regulations as amended, relating to amendments to the adopted development order number 05-1 pursuant to an application by the property owner to amend the Lexington Station Mixed Use Development MU to amend the residential building setbacks on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newbury, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, sir. And Miss Judy, would you please swear everyone in? If you are here to speak to ordinance 2020-21, please click the hand symbol at the bottom of your screen. Let us know. Miss Judy's going to read the oath one time, and then she'll go around with everybody who has their hand raised, and you will say your name and whether you do or you do not. Miss Judy, please read it, swear them in.
Okay. Do you hereby swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Brian Thomas, I do.
David McDaniel, I do.
Dallas, is there anyone else with their hand up?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Jay Brown.
Okay, Mr. Brown, we are swearing in for ordinance 2020-21 in this quasi judicial. Did you hear the oath?
I did.
Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
You have been duly sworn.
Thank you.
Dallas, do we have anyone else?
No, sir.
Okay, let's handle our ex parte for ordinance 2020-21. Commissioner Coleman? Do you have any extra? No. Commissioner McKinley?
None.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
None.
Commissioner Martin?
None.
Commissioner Norfleet? That was a no from Commissioner Norfleet. Okay, well, let's jump right into our staff overview, and then we'll hear from the applicant with no time limit. Brian, are you doing the overview for this one as well?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance 2020-21. It is a minor amendment to amend the mixed use development order 05-1. It's an application by M3 Development for the owners, as agent for the owner, or CL Bryce. Basically, the amendment would allow for the front yard setbacks. Again, this is the second reading. The commission has seen this before. The property in question is the property that surrounds the Easton Newbury Sports Complex. While the amendment would essentially be in effect throughout the entirety of both of these large parcels, the actual effect is likely only to be seen up in the northern parcel, which is the area that's being designated for single family development. As it stands right now, the front yard setbacks are 5 feet. I know it looks like 15 with a line. It's actually it was 5 feet, side interior 10 and side street 10 with a rear of 10. And so the request is to go from a 5-foot front yard setback, which is sort of that neo-traditional design where you bring the houses up to the front, right up by the sidewalk, and then you have your rear entry garages and alleyways and things. To change that back to a more standard, typical development pattern that we see in Newbury, and to do that, you'd need the front yard setbacks at 20 feet, and then also a request to change the interior side yards, not those that front a side street, but just the interior side yards to 5 feet, which is fairly common in a lot of our other planned developments. This application will not change the allowable density of single family or multifamily within the mixed use development in any way. So the actual underlying numbers of densities will not change, and it will not have any effect whatsoever on the accessory building setbacks. And so staff's recommended action is to enact ordinance 2020-21 on second reading. Mr. McDaniels is available to answer questions. He didn't have a presentation for you, but he did want to be available in case you had any questions for him.
Well, staff is doing an excellent job at doing the presentations for both staff and the applicant. Well, if applicant is waiving their right to make a presentation, that's going to take us to public comment, which Dallas already has our telephone number on the screen. So ladies and gentlemen, we are in our second quasi judicial of the evening. This is quasi judicial second reading of ordinance 2020-21. The purpose of this request is to amend the front and side yard setbacks in the residential development areas. We are at public comment in our procedures. If you have a comment you'd like to make or a question you'd like to ask, call the number on your screen. Once we get you into the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol and we will get you queued up. And that is about 40 seconds. Dallas, do we have anyone with their hand up?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and take us back to the commission. I again have not been contacted by anyone wishing to claim third-party intervener status in this process. So we'll give the applicant the ability. I know you didn't want to make a presentation, but did you hear anything from the staff that you'd like to cross-examine? I see a head shake of no.
No, I don't have anything to share beyond this.
Thank you, sir. Staff, did you have anything you wanted to cross-examine? I'm assuming no.
Yes, sir.
I see a head shake no. Members of the decision-making body, do you have any questions for staff on this second reading? I see none. That's going to move us to final arguments. Brian, did you have a final argument?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Applicant, did you want to make any final arguments?
Nope, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, Rich, will you please advise the commission as to the applicable law?
Absolutely. We are once again governed by the substantial and competent evidence standard.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, commission, we are entered into deliberations. If the commission does not have any deliberations to make, you can make a motion to approve with conditions, continue, or deny the application. Is anyone ready to make a motion? Commissioner Martin.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin and a second from Commissioner McKinley. Are there any last questions or comments on the motion on the floor, which is to approve on second reading ordinance 2020-21 from the dais? Seeing none, Dallas, will you please put our telephone number back up? Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our second quasi-judicial hearing of the night. This is on ordinance 2020-21. The motion on the floor is to approve staff's recommendation. If you'd like to make a comment or you have a question about this ordinance, simply call the number that's on your screen. Once we get you dialed into the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know that you have a comment to make, and we'll get you queued up. It's about 35 seconds. So if you're watching at YouTube, you're just now seeing all of this come up. Okay, now we're over 40. Dallas, do we have anyone with their hand raised?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Well, let's bring us back to the commission for a vote. Dallas, stop me if anybody raises their hand in this process. Commissioner Norfleet, yay or nay?
Yay.
Commissioner Martin?
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
No.
Commissioner McKinley?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Coleman?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Farnsworth in dissent, and that closes our second quasi-judicial and moves us to item number 8, which is legislative hearing, stimulate economic development by providing criteria for refunds of commercial development fees. This is resolution 2020-29. I believe Brian's going to take us through this, but Rich, will you go ahead and read the resolution into the record for us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 2020-29, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newbury, Florida, providing for a schedule of refunds of fees and charges for matters pertaining to commercial development in the City of Newbury as specified in Section 14-110. Fees enumerated, Section 98-198, charge imposed, and Section 98-172, charge imposed of the City of Newbury Land Development Regulations, and Resolution 2018-08 to stimulate economic development, providing qualification criteria, providing severability, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Brian, do you have a presentation for the commission?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, of course. There we go. Always have a presentation ready. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As stated, this is a presentation for Resolution 2020-29. This is, we have presented this concept to the Commission for approval before, and then the last time we brought it forth, The commission requested that staff come back with some real world examples of how this would work as commercial developments happen in the city of Newbury. And so we've done just that. And hopefully you will like what we have are proposing. So I apologize, I have to move my little screen thing around so I can see what's under it. Of course, the purpose of the incentive is to encourage quality commercial development in the city of Newbury and stimulate economic development. It will help expand the tax base of the city, provide some new employment opportunities through commercial development, and also can help encourage upgrading historical commercial structures in the downtown historic district. Quick program review. The development fee refunds would be reserved for new commercial construction or expansions, physical expansions of existing businesses. The amount of the refund would be negotiated between the developer and staff and then approved by the city commission. The criteria for approval would be meeting or exceeding design standards in the land development regulations, how many new jobs potentially are going to be created, the amount of overall capital investment that's going to be made into the city of Newbury, into the community. And for those that are potentially in the historic district, it's a renovation of a historic commercial structure. The basic bottom line of the program is that applicants could receive up to 100% refund of the first $10,000 in development related fees and up to 50% on fees over that initial $10,000 and up to $50,000, which would yield a maximum potential refund of $30,000. The fees that are eligible for the refund would be limited to planning fees, building permits, and water and wastewater connection and development fees. The fees would be paid in advance, and then the refund would be issued after the project was completed and compliance was reviewed by the LDR administrator. It's limited to an annual program cost of $50,000 unless the commission were to approve additional funding. If the program proved to be very successful as an incentive, the commission would have the option to expand it. So our first example would be the Newbury Town Center 24-hour fitness center project. There is a total project value of right at $800,000. And just go through the list of different planning and application or building permit fees, new construction fee and plan reviews, etc. When you add these up, you come up with a total of approximately $23,432 as planning and development fees for this project. The qualification criteria, again, facility construction incorporates the Florida vernacular architecture in its design. In this case, the buildings at Newbury Town Center do just that. So they would qualify in that criteria. Creation of new jobs, it will create some jobs. At this point, we don't know quite how many, but it will create new jobs. Results in capital investment, as we stated, it's nearly $800,000 in capital investment. And it's not applicable as far as the historic structure in this case. So the potential refund, again, the total development fees paid would be $23,432, less the first $10,000 yields a remainder of $13,432, and then up to half of the remainder would equal $67,16. And so the remaining fees paid after a refund for this particular project would be $6,716. So we've gone from $23,432 to $6,716 for a total refund of $16,716. And one of the questions that the commission posed to staff was, okay, how long is that going to take to be recovered in the additional tax revenues generated by the new development. And so if you have the total development fee refund of 16,716 at our current millage rate of 5.9999, your approximate annual tax revenues would be 47.99. And so if you just take the total development fee refund, divide it by the annual tax revenues, you come up with approximately 3.5 years to recover, and which of course the final recovery would end in tax year number 4. You round up. So that would be example number 1 of how this could work. Example 2, a little bit different type of project. It's an expansion. Pet Paradise. Their total project value is actually on nearly $1 million, $950,000. They had a site plan fee, $2,200, the commercial building permit fee and new construction fee and plan reviews. They did not have any sewer connection development or water connection development fees because they're on well and septic in their location. So you have a total fees that would qualify for refund of $10,950. Qualification, they I would say that on review, they exceed the minimum design standards, so they would qualify there. The expansion will create at least a few new jobs, and as we saw, the capital investment is nearly $1 million. And of course, the historic preservation wouldn't, or historic district wouldn't apply here either. And so you have the potential development refund. You have first $10,000, and so that would leave them only with $950, half of that being $475, for a total remaining fees paid after the refund of $475, and potential development fee refund of $10,475. As far as how long it would take to recoup in the new tax revenues, because it's less of a refund. You've got about $5,700 potential in annual tax revenue increase. Divide that out and you come up with 1.8 years. So final recovery would be in tax year number 2. So hopefully those examples give you a little bit better understanding of how it would work in actual progress. Staff's recommendation is to approve resolution 2020-29. It would be approved on an annual basis. We have set the money aside in this year's budget. We haven't had it to use yet, but we would like to start using it right away as an incentive and as to basically incentivize the new commercial development within the city. It'd be another, we think, substantial tool in the toolbox for economic development, alongside of our ad valorem tax rebate program that we have available as well. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes the presentation.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. I lost my feed there for a little bit, but I'm back now, hopefully. So let's go to the commission for commissioner comments, questions for staff. Commissioner Farnsworth.
The proposals that you presented as examples, would this be retroactive to them, or so they've gotten approval for their projects?
Mr. Mayor, that would be at the discretion of the commission. They could make it, they could make the effective date whatever date they choose. It could be June 1st or another. It'd be at the discretion of the commission.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to chime in on that if I can.
Go ahead, Mr. New.
Mr. Mayor, we've had a really good 6 months run for commercial development. Nearly all of that is aware that this program was being contemplated, and staff recommends that we backdate it for any commercial development to the beginning of the fiscal year, which is when the commission directed us to set aside funds.
Thank you, Mr. New. I was under the impression we were already full force on this, so I would concur with the manager's comments. Any other questions or comments from the dais? Commissioner McKinley.
Some of y'all are going to look at me like I'm crazy with what I'm about to say. I know for us as a church, we're going to be filing for a building permit for a phase 2 building, sometime within the next few months. And the concern that I have with this, and I only bring this up because, right is right. If it's a nonprofit commercial construction that doesn't pay property taxes, there's no recovery for the city. And I don't know if that needs to be in the language of this, and again, I know I'm shooting myself in the foot right now, but there is no potential recovery for the city with that.
We appreciate the honesty of that question. Brian or Mr. New, you want to address that?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. It's to Commissioner McKinley's point, it's not explicitly spelled out. However, it's inherent in the negotiation process, what the award would be, or the refund rather would be. And in the case where there is no taxable capital investment, then most likely staff would not recommend a refund for a nonprofit commercial structure that wasn't likely to generate tax revenues. But it could be altered and spelled out to that effect.
Commissioner McKinley?
The only reason, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Nope, you're up. Your floor.
Okay. The only reason I was saying that is because not all of the criteria was met with the 2 examples that you gave us. And so, it could be 1 or 2 of those things may not, line up. And that's the only reason I'm saying it. Because right now it probably only affects us, but eventually there could be other nonprofits that and I'm just watching out for the city is all I'm doing.
To Commissioner McKinley's point, it would certainly answer the question if we put that language in there. I think everyone has approached this by thinking that certainly the tax refund, the benefit would be based on the turnaround time, the benefit to the city, all of those kinds of things. So, maybe we could insert some language in there that says there has to be X in order to even qualify, just to stop that conversation from potentially happening. Does the commission agree with that? I got 3 head nods to add some language to that effect into the program. Any further questions or comments from the commission?
I'm indifferent. I'm fine with the language being added.
Okay. Commissioner Coleman?
Yeah, I just want to let Brian know that was a good presentation, because I know you were out and you were trying to get back home, but and I'm indifferent too. Go ahead and add the language.
Okay. So we've had the resolution read into the record. We did that before I dropped. You guys have had the presentation. Have you asked your questions? Anyone ready to make a motion?
Move to approve as written, with
language to Commissioner
with the
McKinley.
language change. Yes.
Okay. I have a motion.
Commissioner Martin with a second.
And I have a Commissioner Martin with a second. So the motion on the floor is to accept the language, to accept the program that staff has brought forth, add some language that would squash any conversations about nonprofits participating, those kinds of things. Any further questions or comments from the dais for staff? Commissioner Farnsworth.
Does it need to be in the language that it's retroactive to the first of the year?
That language is it there, Brian? It seems like I read it, but I'm not sure.
No, Mr. Mayor, but we could easily add that.
Okay.
Add that in.
Commissioner Coleman, will you amend your motion to add Commissioner McKinley's language and the language for the retroactivity?
Yes. And
go ahead, Commissioner Coleman.
And I want to thank Commissioner McKinley. I wasn't even thanking for the not-for-profits. And I mean, that goes as deep, not just for only churches, but, you know, the Alachua County Forever or whatever that they came in. You don't know what some of them will end up doing, but
Sure,
yeah.
absolutely. Commissioner Martin, do you amend your second?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Hearing no further questions or comments from the commission. Who was that?
That was Commissioner Norfleet.
Commissioner Norfleet, go ahead.
I just had just a quick question. How's with the current state of affairs that we're dealing with COVID and all that? How is that going to affect with finances with the city, or is that? I guess that'd be a question for Dallas or Mike.
Well, let's give Mike a shot at answering it first, and then if he needs help, we'll go to Dallas.
Mr. Mayor, you know, I always need help on this question. Now, Mr. Mayor, we have experienced decreases in revenues from the state with regards to anything related to sales tax, those types of revenues. So some wild spaces deficiencies. In evaluating where we are budget year to date, we don't think that shortage in revenues is significant enough to affect funding for this particular line item. We felt like all along this was a priority for the commission. We funded it for 1 year as we go through the budget discussion for next fiscal year. We anticipate some robust conversation with the commission about whether they want to fund it a second year, and that might be a consideration. But for now, we feel like that our current budget can withstand the funding that was earmarked for this year.
Commissioner Norfleet, do you have any follow-up questions?
No, I don't. That answered.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner McKinley?
I just want to commend the staff. I think this is a bold move, and eventually I think it will pay off for us. And I like the program.
I ditto those thoughts. We're very
We
excited.
definitely want to get some positive press off of this.
And I think if we can get somebody to participate in the program, we absolutely will. Okay, any further questions from the dais on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, Dallas, would you put our phone number back up? Ladies and gentlemen, we are on new item 8, which is our stimulus package going in Newbury for hope to simulate some commercial development. We have a motion to approve that staff recommendation with just 2 changes. We're going to put some language in there that clarifies that we're looking for commercial development that will eventually repay the taxpayers of the city of Newbury, as well as making the date retroactive, going back to the point when we first approved this program. If you'd like to make a comment or you have a question on the motion on the floor, all you need to do is dial the phone number that you see on your screen. Once we get you into the meeting, you'll see at the bottom of your screen a little hand symbol. Simply click that symbol. That'll let us know that you have a comment or you'd like to ask a question, and we'll get you in the queue. By my clock, that's been just a little over 40 seconds. Dallas, do we have anyone with their hand raised?
No, sir.
Okay, let's go back to the commission then for a roll call vote. Let's go back to the normal order. Commissioner Coleman.
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley.
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner Norfleet.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. And that moves us on to agenda items. The new number 9 is Oak Park Phase 2 subdivision construction plans, resolution 2020. I believe Wendy's going to take us through this. But Rich, if you would, go ahead and read that resolution into the record for us while Wendy gets her computer fired up and ready to share that screen. And Brian, you're playing backup just in case.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is resolution number 2020-31 SD 20-02. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newbury, Florida, approving with appropriate conditions and safeguards construction plans for Oak Park Phase 2 as authorized under Section 5.17 of the City of Newbury Land Development Regulations for the construction of infrastructure and site improvements in a planned development PD zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newbury, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date.
All right, Wendy, are you? Yep. All right. Share the
We're ready
screen.
to
We're
go.
ready to go. Take it away.
So this application, resolution 2019-31, which is the wrong number. So keep in mind that should say 2020. And this is for construction plan approval. And the application is located over on Newbury Lane, and it's part of the Newbury Gateway Plan Development, which was approved back in 2013 for 113 total units. There are two phases. You recently did approve phase 1, which has been under construction for 70 lots. This is phase 2 with 43 lots. And the purpose of the request is for construction plan approval. Essentially, construction plan approval, the developer proceeds with infrastructure prior to any kind of final plat approval, and then they'll seek final plat approval once they have either infrastructure complete or they've have an approved surety. In this case, the applicant is proceeding the same way they did for phase 1, in that they will go ahead and get that surety first and then come in for final plat approval. And this shows you the location, that it's on the north side of Newbury Road over behind Hitchcock's, and it's just south of the Freddie Warmack Park. And so this gives you the overall master plan with both phase 1 and phase 2. And this is a closer view of phase 2 with the 43 lots. The recommendation of staff is for approval, but the construction plans have been reviewed. They've gone through review and revision and re-review, and staff is satisfied with that. And also EDA has reviewed the engineering as well. Comments have been provided and everything has gone through that process, with stormwater permit also issued. The recommendation is for approval of the construction plans for Oak Park Phase 2. And Mr. McDaniel is here to answer any questions, but I went through the presentation as well as Jay Brown Professionals. If you have questions for them, we went ahead and made that presentation.
Okay, thank you, Miss Wendy. Mr. McDaniel, did you want to make any comments or questions to the commission before we ask any questions? No, I don't see. It's not you, Mr. Brown, are you? You're waiting for something else, right?
Yeah. I think Dallas would have to let him in the room. He's in the attendees room.
Ah, okay.
I'm actually here, Jay Brown from Jay Brown Professional Group with Mr. McDaniel. It looks like he just got in, but we don't necessarily have another presentation to present to you this evening. We agree with Ms. Kinzer's presentation.
All right.
So unless you have any questions, I mean, Mr. McDaniel, I think he's now on. Oh, there he is.
With us
I
now.
am.
All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, Mr. McDaniel, or are you good with what staff has said?
Not really. Just to add that the builders are receiving a lot of interest in Oak Park. They're very optimistic about the future, and in general, we're really proud of the subdivision and what we've done there, and looking forward to seeing it get built out and adding to the community in Newbury.
It's looking wonderful so far. All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
then we'll come back to the commission. Any questions for staff on resolution 2020-31? And I seem to have lost Commissioner Martin. Is Commissioner Martin still in the meeting, Dallas?
No, sir, I don't see him.
Okay, so we're going to proceed with the roll call votes. If someone wants to make a motion, one commissioner down. Is anyone ready to make a motion on resolution 2020-31? I got a motion to approve from Commissioner McKinley.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Coleman. Are there any questions or comments on the motion on the floor from the dais? Seeing none, Dallas, if you put our telephone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on agenda item 9, which is, it's a new item 9. Oak Park Phase 2 subdivision construction plans. If you'd like to make a comment or you have a question about this agenda item, all you need to do is call the phone number that's on your screen now. Once we get you into the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. All you need to do is click that symbol. That will let us know that you have that comment or you have that question you'd like to ask, and we'll make sure you have the opportunity to address the commission. We do have a little bit of a time delay between our live feed and the YouTube feed, so we give a few seconds here to make sure everybody has a chance to call in. And Dallas, do we have anybody with their hand raised?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll ease on back to the commission and we'll begin with a roll call vote. Commissioner Coleman?
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley?
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Norfleet?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Martin not able to rejoin the meeting as of yet. That will move us to item 9, or new 10, preliminary fire assessment rate, resolution 2020-30. I believe Dallas is going to take us through this. Thank you. We appreciate you, gentlemen. Have a wonderful night. I believe Dallas is going to take us through this, but Rich, if you would go ahead and read resolution 2020-30 into the record for us, we would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 2020-30, a resolution of the City of Newbury, Florida, relating to the provision of fire rescue services, facilities, and programs in the City of Newbury, Florida, establishing the estimated assessment rate for fire rescue assessments for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020, directing the preparation of an assessment roll, providing for hardship assistance, authorizing a public hearing, and directing the provision of notice thereof, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Rich. Dallas, are you ready to go?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Take it away.
As the commission knows, the commission levies a fire assessment for the provision of fire services in the city of Newbury. Your fire assessment by law must go to fund personnel costs, capital improvements, equipment, and other costs related to fire or non-medical emergencies, as well as maintaining the readiness of your fire station and your firefighters. So basically that means your fire assessment you levy can't go to life-saving portions of the fire department budget, can only go to those portions of the budget that are intended to save property. The commission's had the fire assessment for close to 2 decades now. In 2015, the commission raised its maximum rates to those that are listed on the screen here. Currently a maximum rate of $225. The rate that you're adopting tonight is your preliminary fire assessment rate. That's the rate that'll be advertised on your trim notices that'll get mailed out in August. It is the highest rate that you can adopt for this budget season without re-noticing all of your residents. So if you vote tonight to set a rate and want to go higher than that, you would have to pay the property appraiser to re-notice all your residents. City staff is not proposing a rate increase this year. This is the 4th consecutive year that we've continued with the same fire assessment rates of $175 per residence, with a square footage fee for your commercial, industrial, institutional. Our budget this year does not see a large increase in your fire assessment. We had a large piece of property come off the tax rolls, being Canterbury, which no longer pays the fire assessment as a tax exempt entity. So that's what I got for you tonight. The resolution before you just adopts those rates and provides that we will advertise those on the trim notice and set your preliminary or your final hearing for the 2nd meeting in August.
Thank you, Dallas. That can you tell the commission the last 25 on that was specifically passed to pay off some equipment in the fire department or to fund some equipment? How many more years until that equipment is paid off? Do you remember?
I believe it was for the tanker, which I want to say is 7 or 8 more years. But as soon as the tanker rolls off, we have the engine. As soon as the engine rolls off, we have the quint. As soon as the quint rolls off, we probably have the tanker again.
All right, we got it. Thank you, sir. Okay, so we can't, whatever you guys say tonight, we can't go above that. What's the commission? Any questions for Dallas before we begin deliberating? Everybody understands where we're at, where that money is going. Okay. Then I'll wait for a motion whenever the commission wants to move. And staff, Dallas, you have a recommended motion. Are you recommending to set it at 225, but not actually go past the 175? Or are you recommending the 175 from here on
Mr.
out?
Mayor, staff's recommendation is to set it at 175, which is your current rate.
Okay. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner McKinley. Are there any questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? And I would say that, guys, since we are a commissioner down, if you are planning on voting against this, can we have that conversation now? Because if this motion fails, then we have some issues and we have some budgetary issues. So if we need to wait till we have all 5 commissioners, that's fine. But it would be better to know that ahead of time. Is anybody uncomfortable with the motion on the floor? Okay. Hearing from nobody. We have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, properly seconded from Commissioner McKinley, to approve the fire assessment at 175. Dallas, if you could put our telephone number up, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at new item 10 on tonight's agenda, setting the preliminary fire assessment rate at $175 a year, same rate that it was last year. All of that money goes to our fire department. Some of that money is going specifically to the new equipment that we have enjoyed seeing around town. If you have a comment or a question on the motion on the floor, which is to approve that assessment rate, all you need to do is call the phone number on your screen. Once we get you into the meeting, you'll see a little hand symbol at the bottom of your screen. All you need to do is click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you have a question or a comment. And again, we've had about 30-second delay between our live feed and YouTube, which should have expired at this point in time. Dallas, do we have anybody with their hand raised?
No, sir.
Okay, let's go on back to the commission then. Roll call votes. Commissioner Coleman.
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley.
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Norfleet.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0 with Commissioner Martin still not able to join the meeting. He is still working on it. And that brings us to comments. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lead off with condolences from city staff to City Attorney Allison Folds and his wife Jackie, and the whole team over at Folds, Walker, and Maltby, and the recent passing of Bradley Folds. Our hearts are broken for you, and please let us know if there's anything we can do to support you. Next Tuesday evening, July 21st, we have our second budget workshop. We have advertised, at least to the commission, that we intend to discuss governmental funds or the general fund, but the state has been slow in delivering our revenue projections, and it's really hard to put together a budget without an expense budget without knowing what your revenues are going to be. So we propose to discuss proprietary funds or enterprise funds at workshop number 2 on the 21st next week, and then circle back and pick up the governmental funds at our third workshop in August, unless the commission objects to that. Just a little bit of an update or response to COVID. As you know by now, this mostly affects, say, the county health department more so than us in terms of daily operations. I'd say the biggest impact to us is that we've lost a large part of our workforce in public works because our prison inmate crews are unavailable to us. It's really put a burden on our public works and our facility staff, our parks maintenance staff, to keep up with all the mowing and facilities. So we asked the commission and the general public to just extend some understanding to us. We've been trying to make it up with privatization of forces. That's been difficult as well. So we have a whole team in Jamie's area that is just running a little bit on the ragged edge, a little bit trying to keep our facilities looking nice for you. We're following the pandemic, as you all know, that we're seeing more positives, especially more positives with regards to coronavirus. We're also keeping an eye on hospital admissions and death rates and those sorts of things. But so far, nothing earth-shattering for Newberry. We're following the governor very closely to see where he's planning on taking whether he's going to just kind of maintain status quo, whether he wants to take a step back from phase 2, maybe back to phase 1A. At least for the next 2 weeks, we don't anticipate him moving forward with, say, maybe a phase 3 announcement, things of that nature. But want the commission and the public to know that staff looks at this on a daily basis and participates with calls both with the county and with the state to make sure that we are staying abreast of situations. As the commission knows, the Little Red Schoolhouse has been under some structural repair for now going on maybe 60 days. It's been a kind of an urgent needs project for the last 3 years. Contractor is doing an outstanding job over there. It's a little bit messy, but whenever he walks away from it, the exterior of the building is going to be as good as new, in my opinion. Every one of those grout joints has been removed, grinded down, refilled. If you get an opportunity, take a look at it. It's a great opportunity to see those tax dollars. We want to reinvest in our infrastructure. That's a perfect example of reinvesting in our infrastructure project. And finally, just an announcement that at our next City Commission meeting, which is July the 27th, we're going to present for first reading the net metering ordinance. Commission directed us a few meetings ago to bring that ordinance back, where we would offer kind of a grandfathered rate for our existing solar customers. So you will see that on first reading at our next meeting. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we've lost Mayor Jordan Marlowe. So we're going to go over to City Clerk, Ms. Rice. Do you have any comments?
Yes, I just want to remind our citizens that the primary election is August the 18th, and our registration deadline is Monday, July 20th. If you have not already registered or are not registered to vote, the deadline is Monday, July 20th for the preliminary election.
Okay, thank you.
You're very
Go
welcome.
ahead. Next, City Attorney Melody, anything?
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. I do want to express my thanks to Manager New for offering the condolences to our firm. I'll definitely pass that on to everyone. I obviously don't have my partners in crime, Scott Walker and Andrea Parker, with me tonight, but I will, I'll keep this very brief. I'll share a quick story with you, something that happened today. I walked into the office. Of course, we lost Brad almost 2 weeks ago, and very tragic circumstances. And I walked into Scott's office today, and he had a putter sitting there. And Scott had a birthday this weekend, and he grabbed that putter and he showed it to me. He said, "This is what my partner gave me as a gift." And it was Brad's putter. And I don't know how many Sunday mornings Brad and Allison Folds and Scott Walker have been out on the golf course, Gainesville Country Club, how many rounds they've gone together. But for Mr. Folds to give that putter to Scott was a pretty touching moment. So I'll share that with you. And that's really all I have for city attorney comment.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Farnsworth. Any comments?
I have nothing to say.
Okay, Commissioner McKinley.
No, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Norfleet.
I have none.
I have none either. I don't have any, and we are texting back and forth, and the mayor said he has none. So we're going to end this tonight and go over to the next meeting, and hopefully we're going to get the mayor back. So if not, I'm going to suggest.
I believe we need to do public comment.
I know you don't have a written agenda.
Yeah, I don't have that.
We offer public comment at the end of the meeting.
Okay. Okay. What I'm going to suggest before we go to that is that we get the city attorney to, if he's okay with that, to conduct without all the paperwork here at my home, to conduct the next meeting. Are you okay with that?
We can do that. It's quasi judicial, so I can walk us through the process. No problem.
All right, thank you. All right, Dallas, I'm ready for public comment. And as there's a 30-minute delay with the YouTube, and I've drugged this out quite a bit, but right there where it says raise hand, you can tap on that, and Mr. Dallas Lee will let you in. Do we have any, Mr. Dallas?
No, sir.
No, sir. All right. Anybody else, any comments before we end this?
Just entertain a motion to adjourn.
Do we do that? I'm looking at the city manager right now.
Yes.
So
It's motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. All right.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right. I have to do it individually, don't I? Can you hear me?
Well,
No, all right. With another. All right.
We're
I'm using
adjourned.
my hand. We're done. What, Mike? I can't hear you.
Very good, Rick. You did a great job closing us out.
Hey, man. I'm just going to let you take it.
Okay.
All right?
Commissioner Coleman.
All right.
We'll open up the meeting. This is the Board of Adjustment meeting following the commission meeting here on July 13, 2020. We can entertain a motion for approval of the agenda for tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Are we still missing Commissioner Martin?
Yes, we're still, yeah, Commissioner Martin's not here. Yeah, I don't see him here.
Okay, we'll do a roll call then on this. Commissioner Farnsworth.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Coleman.
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley.
Aye.
And Commissioner Norfleet.
Aye.
The motion passes 4-0. That takes us to the approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion for the approval of the June 22nd, 2020 minutes?
So moved.
This is Mr. Commissioner McKinley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Coleman seconds. Do a roll call again. Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Coleman.
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley.
Aye.
And Commissioner Norfleet.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. And that takes us to new business, which is a quasi judicial hearing on the site development plan approval of the Alachua County Agricultural and Equestrian Center and Alachua County IFAS Extension Office and Auditorium, which is resolution 2020-27 / application SDP 20-04. I will begin by reading that into the record, and then I will we'll swear in and do the ex parte and walk through the quasi judicial process. Give me just a second here. This is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newbury, Florida, serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newbury, Florida, approving an application for site and development plan approval of new construction and associated site development for the Alachua County Agricultural and Equestrian Center and Alachua County IFAS Extension Office and Auditorium pursuant to Section 14.12 of the City of Newbury Land Development Regulations to be located on property within the Canterbury PD plan development on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newbury, Florida, repealing resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. And in the quasi judicial setting, we'll be taking testimony. Primarily, we'll want to determine whether we have the substantial and competent evidence and whether that's met tonight with respect to the board's decision. And all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of the record. We will first hear from the applicant. We'll first hear a staff overview, and then we'll hear from the applicant. And the applicant will then we'll have public comment, and if there's been any interveners, then we will hear from them at that time. We'll also we'll give the applicant the ability to conduct some cross-examination, and then the members of the decision-making body will be able to ask questions. We'll hear final argument. The city attorney will advise on the standard for tonight before entering into deliberations. Let me ask, is there any members of the Board of Adjustment who have had any ex parte communications regarding this matter? I'll just ask in order. Commissioner Farnsworth?
No.
Commissioner Coleman?
No.
Okay, Commissioner McKinley?
No.
And Commissioner Norfleet?
No.
Okay. So at this time, Miss Judy, we'll have anybody who is planning to provide any testimony this evening on this matter to be sworn in. And let's see, Brian, will you be presenting?
I will be.
Okay, Wendy will be presenting. And do we have the applicant here or anybody else who intends to offer any testimony or evidence tonight?
I do. I will.
Okay, we have,
Okay, Ms. Heathcock.
are you ready for me to give this?
Yes, please, Ms. Judy.
Do you hereby swear from the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. This is Wendy Kinzer.
I do. This is Monique Heathcock.
I do, Ramon
I do,
Galarrete.
Gina Peebles.
You have been duly sworn.
Miss Wendy, do you want to start us off with the staff overview, please?
Yes, I will. Just 1 second. Round sharing. Okay, so now it's not going to work.
Wendy, we see it.
But isn't it just, it's not the full.
It's not the full slideshow I think you're looking for.
There we go. Okay, there we go. All right. So this application is for site and development plan approval. The applicant is the owner, Alachua County Agricultural and Equestrian Center and the Alachua County IFAS Extension Office and Auditorium. Monique Heathcock is representing CHW Professional Consultants for the owner. And this request is for the site and development plan approval to go on with the development of the site. There's the Agricultural Equestrian Center, which is about 35.73 acres, and the IFAS Extension Office and Auditoriums area, which is about 5 acres. And planned improvements include office, auditorium, restroom buildings, a relocated prefab metal barn, an outdoor ring for equestrian activities, and of course associated parking and utility stormwater. The site you can see on Newbury Road, and it's just by Newbury Corners development. And this is their site plan. And I will let the applicant take it from here to go ahead and go through their presentation, which to go ahead and describe to you about the proposed improvements.
Miss Wendy, do you have our presentation, or should I load it from here somehow?
I do not. Dallas, do you have, you should have it.
I have it if need be.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian, if you've got it, if you can put it up.
Okay, one moment, please.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Monique Heathcock. I'm a registered professional engineer with CHW and the engineer of record for the site improvements here. And this is for the Alachua County Agricultural and Equestrian Event Center and the IFAS Extension Office and Auditorium. And as Ms. Wendy said, Alachua County is the applicant. The next slide, please. We are here to request site plan approval. And the next slide. The project meets the requirements of the City of Newbury and Alachua County site plan requirements. This is just a little snapshot of the timeline from application through this evening. We've already been to P&Z, of course. And next we will look at existing conditions. On the next slide, we see the existing site. We're going to zoom in just a moment. The site is outlined in the black and white lines. There's two areas. I don't know if you can see my cursor. This is the Agriculture and Equestrian Center, and then this is the IFAS portion of the site. The aerial is a little bit old. To the north, the subdivision is still under construction. That, of course, is there today. The site that we're talking about, though, is pretty much unchanged from what you see on the screen there. The agricultural and equestrian portion is 37 acres. The smaller portion on the right is 5 acres. And on the agricultural and equestrian center, you see the 5 parallel barns. They total about 53,000 square feet. And on the larger covered arena, that's about 59,000 square feet. There is an existing warm-up ring. We're going to look at these in a little bit more detail. You can see on the existing IFAS area on the right, the 5 acres, there's nothing there now, just trees and open land. Next slide, please. So zooming in a little bit, you can see some of the things we were just talking about. At the north of the site, at an angle, is the existing outdoor ring, and the corner of it is cut off by the property line at the subdivision there. We're going to take that ring, and you'll see in a later slide that we're going to relocate that. It's going to turn and get relocated a little bit. The roadways are labeled here. We have State Road 26 to the south and Northwest 232nd Terrace on the west. On the east side of this agricultural and equestrian portion of the site, there is an existing north-south driveway that will be improved as part of the site improvements, and we'll come back to that in a moment as well. On the next slide, these are some views from the adjacent roadways. On the left is a view of the site from West Newbury Road. The upper right is a view into the entrance where the signage is, and the bottom right is a view from 232nd Terrace, kind of looking towards the southeast, towards the existing site. On the next slide, we see the existing covered arena. It will receive some renovations. This is about how it looks today. The next slide shows the clubhouse. Again, that will be renovated. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The next slide is an existing barn. This is not currently on the site, but it will be relocated onto the agriculture and equestrian portion of the site. This is what the barn looks like. It is this exact barn that will be relocated to the site. The future land use, it is planned development for the agricultural portion, and it is corporate park for the IFAS portion. You can see residential to the north and some commercial to the west. The zoning is plan development again for the agricultural center and agricultural for the IFAS portion. This slide shows the preliminary development plan. There's a lot of information on here, and we'll kind of dissect this and look at some enlargements of it in a moment here. But basically, these are the conditions that the site plan must meet. And through this presentation, we're showing how we are meeting the different requirements. So if you look at the site plan here, we have, these are existing access points where the large black arrows are on 232nd Terrace. Those are existing access points. They will remain. The large black arrow on the center on the right side is a new connection between the IFAS and the equestrian portion of the site. And towards the northwest corner of the site, not labeled, there will be an emergency access. It is going to be gated and closed and is not a normal access, but it would be a way for emergency vehicles to come into the site, supposing that an event has some traffic on the site and they need to get in quickly. It provides them a way to get in or out without delay. So that shows the access, and then we're going to look in more detail at the small text on the right on the next slide. So we've highlighted some of the things that you'll see in the site plans that need to be complied with and that are complied with. For example, the stormwater management facilities, those are required. You'll see those in a later slide. Ingress and egress, we're allowed to use the existing driveways as well as, add as needed, and we discussed those briefly on the previous slide. We do have common areas and open space exceeding 20%. Number 4 there talks about some of the permitted uses, and those are not things you will see in the plans. Those are requirements for the future operation of the site. Next slide. Again, this is a continuation of the uses that are allowed. Again, not things that you will see on the plans, but they are requirements for the future operation, the things that are allowed to be done on the site. And the next slide. Again, some highlights of some things that are required and that you'll be able to see in the site plans. One of them is the buffer that goes along the north side of the site between the equestrian agricultural center and the subdivision to the north. It's also on the west side a little bit, and we'll zoom in on that in a few slides here. We are connecting the site to the city's potable water and sanitary sewer. Stormwater will be on site. There will be parking, there will be internal private drives for circulation. They will be maintained by the county, and the common area will also be maintained by the county. So let's now take a look at the proposed development. And with the next slide, we're saying that the proposed development does comply with the listed ordinances and the 2 resolutions that are shown there. The next slide shows an overall, and we're going to dissect this and zoom in. You see both sites here. The smaller one on the right is the IFAS office, extension office, and the auditorium, and the larger one in the center is the Agricultural and Equestrian Event Center. We've listed on the left side of the screen there, again, the same things out of the plan development that have to be complied with. We'll look at these in a little bit more detail, but just as a big picture statement, the county will be investing about $13.5 million in the improvements that you see in these plans. On the next slide, we're going to zoom into IFAS there. You can see at the bottom the SMF, that is stormwater. So again, that's one of the stormwater areas on site. The IFAS office building is about 7,500 square feet. And that's in purple. The other purple is the auditorium, which is about 13,750 square feet. It seats 300 people, has some kitchen facilities. North of that, you see a big empty white space, and that is the garden area for the master gardeners. And of course, there's parking on site. The gray parking is paved. There is also some parking shown in white that is unpaved. And some of the other smaller green areas that say SMF, those are for LIDs and for stormwater as well. So that is the IFAS site. This gives you some views of the IFAS building, the office building from 4 sides. The next slide will give you the same views for the auditorium. And the next slide has a rendering which is a little bit easier to understand. This particular view, we're looking towards the northeast. It's the IFAS Extension Office on your right and the auditorium on the left. The next slide has us looking towards the southwest, the same two buildings, just a different view. And the next slide has them, let's see, we're looking to the west here. Again, the same two buildings looking to the west. On this slide, we're going to focus on the Agricultural and Equestrian Event Center. The purple items are the brand new facilities. So the top purple is the outdoor ring, which there is already an outdoor ring there, but it was in an angle and to the north and its corner was cut off. So we've relocated it and enlarged it a little bit. The smaller purple below the proposed facility is a new restroom building. And then the rectangular purple below the existing arena, that is the relocated metal barn that we saw a photo of earlier. The covered arena will be renovated. It's going to get new bleachers, new ADA ramps, new ceiling fans, some new lighting. The clubhouse, which is existing, will also be renovated. The restrooms are going to be renovated. It will have new flooring and a new roof, new paint inside and out, and new light fixtures. Noise for the site will comply with both city and county ordinances. And you can see here, there's two large SMF, two large stormwater areas, one at the very bottom of the screen and one to the west edge of the facility. So those all comply with county and Suwannee River Water Management District requirements. The next slide shows 3 views of the new restroom building from 3 different sides. Landscaping. This is a one view, and we're going to zoom in on this in a moment. But you can see all of the plantings that will be going in. They're in the buffer on the north and the west. They're also around the stormwater areas. They are around buildings. They're along the north-south drive that runs between the IFAS facility and the agricultural facility, and they're also in parking areas. So there's quite a bit of landscaping there. We're actually exceeding the Alachua County requirements for landscaping, which exceed the city of Newbury requirements. On the next slide, we're zooming into part of the buffer along the north edge there, the top edge and the west edge, the left edge. The buffer continues off the edge of the screen, but we're just zooming in a little bit. And this is to buffer the Agricultural and Equestrian Event Center from the neighborhood to the north. You can see on the left edge of the screen there, the listing of the types of plants that will be in the buffer. There's quite a few of them there. And when you look at the total length of the buffer, it ends up being about 98 canopy trees, 136 understory trees, 59 evergreens, and 1,163 shrubs. It is a very thick buffer. It meets the requirements. That is the intent, so that there's proper screening to the neighborhood, and there will also be an opaque fence that runs through that buffer as well. One of the conditions that we talked about earlier was that the site must tie into city water and sewer. So the blue lines here are city water, or water lines, I should say, and the green lines are sewer lines. And the ones that run across the top of the page and down the right edge of the page, those are the ones that are the mains that will be owned by the city, but the whole site is getting water that will tie into city water and city sewer. On the next slide, we have the electric, and you heard earlier that some of the overhead electric will remain. What we've shown in green on the right edge of the screen is it's all new underground for the IFAS facility. All of that's underground. And then on the Equestrian and Agricultural Center, the red is existing overhead that will be removed. The blue is existing overhead that will remain. And the green is new underground electric. So it's a mix, but the blue is what will remain overhead. It's kind of internal to the site. So, you know, the outside edges of the site will be underground, which will help the aesthetics of the site. So that should conclude the different requirements that we need to meet with. On the next slide, Basically, we believe we've met everything for City of Newbury and for Alachua County. And this concludes our presentation. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Heathcock. Is there anybody else? I know the county has several representatives here tonight. Is there anybody else who intends to speak for the county? Or are we relying on the CHW's presentation? Okay. What we'll do, Ms. Heathcock, there may be some questions a little bit later, but at this time, we're going to allow the public to offer any comments. Dallas, if you can help me with your slide that you and Mayor Marlowe have worked out so well and efficiently at this point.
Excuse me, one question. Do you want to have the rest of the staff presentation and the recommendation?
I'm sorry. Yes, please. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Heathcock. We will now hear back from the City of Newbury staff again.
Okay. Just bear with me for a minute here. So do you see my screen now? You do, right?
We do. It's not in the full. There we go.
All right. Here we go. So I just wanted to point out that the county is the authority having jurisdiction of this development, but we've been all working closely together. The Utilities Department has been working closely with CHW, with Monique, and the Fire Department is also working closely to develop their emergency response plans, and they have addressed all of the different comments that have been provided, and staff has reviewed those revised plans, and they're all sufficient. Planning and Zoning Board actually recommended at their June 1st meeting, they voted unanimously to recommend to the Board of Adjustment approval, and the recommended motion, as you heard in your previous meeting in the City Commission, is to approve the resolution 2020-27 to approve this application for site and development plan approval, but conditioned, as you discussed earlier, upon the Alachua County Board of County Commission's approval of capping the city's expenses to extend water and wastewater utilities to the agricultural centers and to the cooperative extension offices at $175,000. So that would be the recommended motion.
Thank you, Ms. Wendy. And now at this time, we will hear from the public. So Dallas, if you could put your screen up again, I appreciate that. We have roughly 30-second delay for those watching on YouTube. So in this regard, we'd ask you, if you're a member of the public and would like to speak at this time, to raise your hand in the Zoom function. And if you're joining by phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and the phone number, just to read it out loud, is 312-626-6799, and the webinar ID 867-5682-2017. We'll wait a few seconds, and then we'll ask Dallas if there's anybody who is raising their hand from the public.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm not aware of us receiving any applications or affidavits for interveners to participate tonight. So then, Ms. Heathcock, I would ask you at this time, as on behalf of the applicant, if there is anything you have an opportunity to cross-examine city staff. If there's anything that you've heard that you would like to question or ask for clarification on, now would be your opportunity to do that.
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then at this time, Wendy, the staff has an opportunity to do any cross-examination. Is there anything that you heard from the applicant or any other evidence tonight that you have any questions about?
No, that would be all. Thank you.
Okay, at this time then, I'll open it up to our board and allow them at this time to ask questions of the staff, the applicant, or anyone else who's participated tonight in the proceeding. And I do think, did we gain Commissioner Martin again? I think we may have him back.
I'm back, and not really a question so much as a comment that I've gotten a lot of very positive feedback from different entities saying how well it's been working out. I feel like the county has done a great job of trying to address all of the issues that have been brought up previously, particularly with regards to safeguarding sound attenuation to the north. So good job on all of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Is there anyone else, any other board member who has any questions or comments at this time?
I do.
Mr. Coleman?
Yeah, and I hope that the Newberry Oaks folks take a look at that aerial, or if they were on, to see that there is no room for a actual fair there after everything that they got on there. And I hope that eases their mind after seeing that. And it was a great, Miss Pig, what is it, Heathcock? Great
Yes.
presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Anyone else? Members of the board? With that, we do allow opportunity for the applicant and staff to present any closing or final arguments. Ms. Heathcock, do you have anything you would like to add at this point?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wendy, how about you?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, then, I'll just remind the board that we are governed by the substantial and competent evidentiary standard, taking into consideration the staff's report, the CHW's presentation, and any other testimony or evidence that's been presented tonight in the quasi-judicial setting. And then I will, at this point, open it up to the board to deliberate and potentially make a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion to approve, and just to clarify, then I think that was Commissioner Coleman with the motion and Commissioner Barnes with the second. Commissioner Coleman, just to clarify, your motion would be to approve as recommended by the staff in their report, which would be to approve the proposed resolution conditioned on the $175,000 cap, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just to make sure we're on the same page there. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any comments on the motion? Any comments from members of the public on the motion? Again, we have to use the Zoom raise your hand function. If there's any member from the public who would like to speak, limited to the motion that is on the table at this time. Dallas, do we have any members who've raised their hands?
No, we do not.
Okay. At this time, we'll then do a roll call on the motion, and we have Commissioner Martin with us again. So I'll start with him. Commissioner Martin.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Norfleet.
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley.
Aye.
Commissioner Coleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 5-0. That takes us to board member comments. We'll start with Commissioner Farnsworth.
I still have nothing to comment.
Okay, Commissioner Coleman.
Nothing. Thank you.
Commissioner McKinley,
No, thank you.
Commissioner Norfleet,
No, I have none.
and Commissioner Martin.
I have nothing.
Okay, and then at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Maltby, before a motion to adjourn, I have just a very brief comment.
Absolutely, Mr. New. I apologize. Go for it.
No, thank you. I don't think I'm typically on the agenda for comments in this meeting, but I just wanted to say this project has been going on. I mean, I think we began speaking with the county on it in June of 2018. Started with a Dallas Lee sending me a copy of the Gainesville Sun article that said the county had decided not to build the fairgrounds at the Weisman property on State Road 24. And so we've been working very hard with the county, and I just wanted to express my appreciation to their team, their project team that includes their consultants. They have excelled in excellence. We have faced several drop dead milestones and worked feverishly to get it all together with no time to spare on more than one occasion. And this is such a meaningful project to Newberry. I just want to express my gratitude to the county and their team for doing such an outstanding job on bringing this project into Newberry city limits. It's been a great partnership, or it is a great partnership, and I can't wait to see the final product. So thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, Mr. New. And with that, we will now
Whoa,
entertain.
whoa.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I want to thank you, Attorney Malty, for taking over here in this little stressful situation tonight. It hadn't been perfect, but you did a great job. Thank you, buddy.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Happy to do it. And now we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. We are adjourned.